Inside Professor Hoffman's study, with a student and Judge Cole present, the professor refrained from lighting a cigar. He wasn't addicted. Not even one a day, he told himself with a wry mental shrug. He'd always rationalized that since he didn't inhale, it was a healthier vice than cigarettes. Penelope worried, of course, but it was one of the man's few pleasures. Denying him felt wrong. Professor Hoffman pulled out the good stuff, a tin of aged, single-estate tea. It was the real deal, a rare vintage Penelope had bought for him years ago on a film shoot in some remote, mountainous region. She was always generous in supporting his hobbies, so much so that she bought a huge quantity. He'd forgotten all about it, letting it sit undisturbed in the back of a cabinet for over a decade. Now, he'd pull a little out for special guests. He rarely drank it himself. With a tea like this, the price wasn't for the leaves, but for the 10-plus years of stored time. To buy it new and age it for another decade was nearly impossible. Forgetting was the best preservation method. If you remembered you had it, you'd never manage to leave it alone. Leo dutifully took the seat at the tea station. The chair itself was ridiculously comfortable, complete with heating and massage functions. He could just imagine Professor Hoffman sinking into this chair, his favorite cigar in one hand, watching one of his classic films. Pure bliss. Right now, though, the professor was in a different state of bliss. Every seasoned fisherman understands that the sport is divided into two parts, the fishing itself and the bragging about the catch. In terms of sheer satisfaction, the second part often outweighs the first, making it arguably more important. Unfortunately, Judge Cole couldn't just post his triumphs on Facebook. A man like him had lived a lifetime of caution. He wasn't about to slip up in his golden years. If he dared to post a picture of his catch today, someone would be offering to gift him an entire river tomorrow. For him, sharing something he enjoyed was tantamount to soliciting a bribe. It made his fishing hobby inconvenient. It was either a major production with security, or he went alone and his family worried. Only here, in his neighbor Luke's private, secure backyard, could he relax. And even this was a clandestine trip. Of course, the fact that they could be neighbors was a testament to Luke's wife, Penelope Hayes, a respected public figure with a clean background. The judge's family couldn't quite wrap their heads around it. The once imposing patriarch was now sneaking over to his neighbor's yard to fish like a little boy. Did retirement really change a man that much? Judge Cole and Professor Hoffman were deep in a sincere, mutual admiration of their respective catches. "We'll be feasting tonight, thanks to you, Judge," Hoffman said warmly. "A fish that big. I've never seen anything like it. I'll have our housekeeper make her spicy poached fish. She's from Louisiana. Her Cajun cooking is incredible." Hoffman knew the judge could handle the heat. He'd been stationed down south for a time. Normally, the judge would catch his fish and go home. Staying for dinner felt a bit too much like a lonely old man imposing on others. But today, since the main course was his own prize, staying felt justified. If he took the fish home, he'd never be able to finish it himself, and his son didn't visit every day. Besides, eating alone was a joyless affair. With Luke insisting, he relented. Just him, Luke, and his student Leo. The judge vaguely remembered a subordinate from years ago with the surname Foster. A homely guy, not particularly sharp. He only recalled him because the man's father-in-law had been an old classmate, a good man with terrible judgment, a trait that had apparently been passed down to his daughter. This young man, however, was handsome, with a clean-cut look that suggested he'd never known a day of hardship. But how was he so good at fishing? Was it beginner's luck? It had to be. Judge Cole had watched him fumbling with his phone, learning how to assemble the rod and mix the bait on the spot. Or was he playing dumb? No, the kid didn't seem to have that kind of cunning. The judge prided himself on his ability to read people. As the two older men chatted, Leo said nothing, focusing on preparing the tea. He skipped the more ostentatious steps like presenting the dry leaves for aroma and simply moved through the process with a quiet, practiced confidence. It was a bit fussy, but he was getting used to it. He took a subtle sniff of the empty, warmed cup. The aroma was incredible, a testament to its excellent storage. Bold, complex, and powerful. When he poured the first infusion, the liquid was a beautiful, clear amber. He placed the small cups near the professor and the judge. Hoffman took a sip, his eyes closing in pure enjoyment. "Leo, your tea making has gotten even better. Last time, after you made tea for us, my wife said she couldn't enjoy mine anymore." Judge Cole picked up his cup, thinking to himself that Luke always knew the right thing to say, even to his students. So gentle and encouraging. The judge had tasted the world's finest teas. Luke was a man who knew how to live. He'd heard the gossip in the neighborhood, that Hoffman was just a homely gigolo who'd married up. But to stay happily married to someone for so many years was an achievement in itself. The people who gossiped usually had lives that were a total mess. The judge had been telling a long-winded story about a bigger fish he'd once caught in some river, and his throat was dry. He raised the cup. It was hot but not scalding, the perfect temperature. The moment the tea touched his tongue, it was smooth, but then a strange tightness seized his throat, almost a numbness. He frowned. Was this tea no good? But just as the thought formed, an explosive sweetness erupted from his throat, flooding his entire mouth. The warmth of the liquid spread down into his stomach, suffusing his whole upper body. What was this tea? So domineering. The young man worked without rush, his movements fluid and graceful, taking his time to produce this tiny cup. It was another long moment before the second infusion was ready. The color was a shade deeper, hinting at red. Professor Hoffman drank it with the same look of bliss. Leo had a cup too. It was exceptional, but it made him feel hungry. This was the kind of tea you needed snacks with. He'd never been a tea drinker before, but he was starting to find it fascinating. It was a way to slow down time, to quiet the mind. The ritual of it seemed to wash away the fatigue of the past few days, like hitting a reset button. The second cup was even more stunning. The throat-locking sensation was gone, replaced by a bold, sweet flavor. Not the direct sweetness of sugar, but a deep, resonant sweetness that bloomed on the palate. The initial hint of bitterness gave way to a fragrant sweetness that felt healthy. It was a pleasure his whole body could feel, not just a simple sensation on the tongue. After the third cup, a light sweat broke out on the back of the judge's neck. It was incredibly comforting. Professor Hoffman finally smiled. Judge, your timing today was perfect. My student here is a master at this, far better than I am. He's a student of Dr. Arthur Sterling, the man who literally wrote the book on the National Tea Sommelier certification process I took. Judge Cole thought for a moment, then nodded. I know Arthur. Years ago, when I was in a local post, we approved the application for his experimental tea plantation, a few thousand acres, as I recall. For the first time, the old man truly looked at Leo. It's rare to see a young person with the patience to study something so deeply. You've got good potential, son. Leo offered a humble smile, thinking, all that and still no affinity notification? According to Hoffman, the judge's wife had passed away 2 years ago, so he was single. But a big shot was a big shot. He could praise you to the heavens and not feel an ounce of genuine connection. Since there was nothing to gain, Leo relaxed and acted naturally. While waiting for the next kettle to boil, he opened the photos he'd taken and showed them to the two men. Professor, he said, I got some shots of Judge Cole fishing. I'll send them to you later. Having been on the national news, Judge Cole was indifferent to having his picture taken. When you're constantly surrounded by cameras, you develop a psychological aversion to them. He'd seen the kids snapping pictures earlier and had been about to say something, but then figured, I'm retired now, why make a fuss? He glanced down at the phone Leo held out. He rarely looked in mirrors or photos these days. The older you get, the more you resist the truth of it. The man who had once commanded regions and shaped policy was now being coddled by his children like a toddler. He was lonely and terrified, especially since his wife was gone. There was no one left to bicker with, and the fear was a constant, creeping presence. It was an anger with no target. The photo captured his age, the white hair, the liver spots, but it also captured his strength. He was fighting to land a massive fish, his smile wide and unrestrained. The setting sun hung in the sky, not as a symbol of decline, but as a backdrop of quiet beauty. Judge Cole stared at the phone until the screen went dark. He tapped it, as if to bring the image back. Just then, the mechanical voice echoed in Leo's mind. Congratulations, host. You have made progress with the Diamond Tier single male, Sanford Cole. Affinity has reached 65. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights. Sanford Cole, 71 years old. Assets, incalculable. Retired federal benefits and allowances, approximate. $1. 13 million annually, excluding pension and tier-specific expenditures. Erudition, above average, 83. Appearance, above average, 79. Leo's hand, holding the teapot, trembled slightly. Incalculable? And this was the first time he'd ever encountered a diamond tier target. This old man was something else. A benefits package of over $1 million a year, not including his pension. Leo knew Professor Hoffman's circle was elite, but this was a whole other level. The system's announcement had genuinely shaken him. Listening to them chat earlier, he hadn't thought much of it. The world was full of people who talked a big game. You could sit in any Starbucks and overhear someone on the phone discussing a 9-figure deal. He couldn't tell if the old judge was serious or just spinning yarns. And Professor Hoffman wasn't the type to give a detailed resume for everyone he met. All Leo knew was that the professor treated the judge with immense respect. But then again, Professor Hoffman seemed to respect everyone. Even with Leo, his own student, he was never condescending, even arranging for a car service. It made you feel valued. No wonder he was the patron saint of trophy husbands. The man's social grace was flawless. To stumble upon a diamond-tier powerhouse like this, he wasn't sure how the system calculated these things, but it had its rules. It meant this old man was probably the highest-ranking person he'd ever knowingly met. No wonder he had that distinct, authoritative air. That quiet, unshakable confidence that you couldn't quite put your finger on, but felt instantly. It was the aura of a man who had wielded national power. He tried to imagine his roommate, Alex Mr. Secretary Young, aging into something like this. It was mind-boggling. Right now, Alex's confidence was still a bit performative, a little too eager to be seen. While fishing, Leo hadn't felt any of this pressure. Once you had a rod in your hand, you were just another angler. The fishing gods don't discriminate. There are only two kinds of people, those who can fish and those who can't. You could use a divorce decree or the deed to a Fortune 500 company as bait. It was all the same. As a novice fisherman, Leo had been full of unearned confidence. And now making tea. Well, with his permanent intermediate tea ceremony skill, level 3, he was a master in his own right. A man skilled in the art of tea is truly captivating. Your tea can not only soothe a wealthy woman's fatigue, but also smooth the wrinkles of her heart, making her willing to open up to you. He wasn't intimidated. No wonder Judge Cole had so casually mentioned approving land grants. He was feeling relaxed, his heart opened by the tea. Leo could take a 7 out of 10 tea and brew it into a 10 out of 10 experience. A 10 out of 10 tea, he could make it an 11, with the bonus effect of candid conversation. Professor Hoffman was also enjoying himself immensely. I told you to take my picture before, Leo. You promised you'd make me look handsome. That shot of the judge is fantastic. Why wait? Let's do a photo shoot for me right now. I can bask in the judge's reflected glory. When friends come over, I'll tell them I'm a good friend of Judge Cole's and ride his coattails. If anyone else had said that, Judge Cole would have been repulsed. He'd dealt with his fair share of hangers-on, businessmen he'd met once at a dinner who would insist on a photo, blow it up, hang it in their office, and then use his name all over town. But Luke was a man of culture, and the judge was retired. Fewer people tried that sort of thing now. His social circles were more insulated. Coming from Luke, it didn't feel opportunistic, just sincere. Besides, that photo the kid took had really scratched an itch. He'd been a handsome man in his youth, and he was still a handsome old man. Sharp features, always impeccably dressed in a classic, scholarly style. Leo slipped into his role as a human tripod. Photography was about two things: choosing the background and managing the subject's mood. You couldn't be tense. Tension tightened the muscles, and the difference between relaxed and tense was night and day. I'm pretty good at this, Leo said confidently. Let's head outside in a bit. For now, I'll just use my phone to check some angles. You two just relax and drink your tea. Don't mind me. I'm just trying to find your best side. As he spoke, he handed the serving pitcher to Professor Hoffman, his other hand holding his phone up as if he were seriously scouting for the perfect shot. Since he said he was just looking for angles, Hoffman and the judge paid him no mind and continued sipping their tea. The drink had warmed them from the inside out, making their palms sweat and their bodies feel comfortably mellow. Seeing how much the judge was enjoying the tea, Hoffman offered, "I can pack some up for you to take home." Judge Cole shook his head. "I just ruin it. My son is even worse. The tea he makes is a disaster." The judge's son, isn't he the head of the city's cultural affairs department? Hoffman thought, it's not that he doesn't have time, it's that he's just bad at it. Since the offer was declined, Hoffman didn't press. He wasn't looking for favors, just fostering goodwill. Their lives didn't overlap much, but Hoffman could see that the judge had taken a liking to Leo. At the very least, he didn't dislike him. The last time the judge had been over fishing, he'd been having a great time until an agent and an actor showed up to visit Penelope. The judge had left without a word. Today, he wasn't leaving. He was talking. That was a good sign. Hoffman pulled up the TikToks of Leo riding horses and showed them to the old man. The judge, despite his age, wasn't completely disconnected from the world, but his phone screen was too small for his old eyes. Here, however, Hoffman had a top-of-the-line sound system and a massive screen. He mirrored his phone, and suddenly Leo's equestrian prowess filled the room. Judge Cole watched, impressed. The young man on the giant screen was genuinely handsome, full of youth and strength. The backdrop of the prairie at sunset was breathtaking. The cinematography was so good you could almost feel the wind, as if you were right there. So many good-looking young men these days were too effeminate for the judge's taste. But this This was different. This was impressive. Then there was the video of him rescuing someone on horseback. That one was genuinely thrilling. Seeing the judge's interest, Hoffman paused it and played it again. See, I told you this student of mine is something special. Judge Cole looked again at Leo, who was still pretending to find angles with his phone. He couldn't help but be impressed. The boy's got real talent, very well-rounded. As they were watching, a notification popped up. A new TikTok had been posted. Hoffman, now a daily viewer, clicked on it immediately. When a creator posts every day, you get into the habit. Missing a day feels like something is off. Today's update was a video of the roommates saying goodbye. The title was simple, Roommates Heading Home. Sean's voice, with its distinctive regional accent, provided the narration. We were supposed to stay through the end of fall break, but something came up with my family, so my roommate had to head back early. Leo was barely in the video. It opened with a shot of a bus station goodbye, then cut to scenes explaining what happened. Them making hand-pulled noodles at Sean's house, his mother rubbing her sore back on the porch, Leo telling his cousin that his roommate's mom was sick and asking if she could recommend a doctor. Then, an ambulance, the passing scenery, the hospital, and finally, the farewell. It was edited like a short film. The footage was raw and a little shaky, nothing spectacular on its own. But the storytelling was so skilled that you couldn't look away. The final sequence, the stark hospital, the car driving away, the rhythmic drip of N4, left you with a pang of sadness, but also a flicker of hope. There was even a shot of a phone screen showing a money transfer from a roommate, and one of Sean's rough-around-the-edges friends awkwardly stuffing cash into his hand. It was a clear, unvarnished story of friendship. His mom was sick. A roommate rescued someone on horseback. The reward he asked for was to help his friend's mom get to a doctor. Then the trip to the state capitol. Judge Cole watched the entire video. When he looked back at the young man now pouring tea, he saw him with his head slightly bowed, focused on the steady, unhurried stream of liquid flowing into the pitcher, steam rising gently around his hands. If Professor Hoffman had simply asked Leo what he did over the break, and Leo had recounted the events in detail, it wouldn't have had the same impact. Hoffman might not have been interested, and it wouldn't have felt as convincing. When Leo had mentioned Sean's mom was sick earlier, the professor hadn't pressed, partly because he didn't know them well, and partly because, at a certain age, you subconsciously avoid unpleasant topics. It wasn't callousness, just emotional self-preservation. People instinctively reserve a degree of skepticism for what they're told, but when they discover information for themselves, it feels more credible. They form their own impressions, even fill in the gaps with their own imagination. The effect is 100 times more powerful than being told a story. Both Professor Hoffman and Judge Cole had now gathered the information they needed. Frankly, society today was a shallow place. Hoffman's wife was a director, and that industry was even more fickle. Divorces one day, scandals the next. The private lives of those people were a tangled mess he wanted no part of. He felt that even he, a self-proclaimed trophy husband, had the moral high ground. And Judge Cole, at his age, had seen it all. Being good at fishing, tea, photography, and horseback riding were all impressive skills, but they weren't what truly moved him. Well, the photo did, at least a little. In his long career, he'd met countless brilliant people, many of them preternaturally capable young men who navigated the bureaucracy with flawless precision. But what was truly rare was to find someone who was both a master of execution and a master of character. It was a difficult balance to strike. Someone with a high IQ often calculates costs and benefits so clearly that they can come across as cold, even when you know they're right. People are strange animals. They understand logic, but still crave the unexpected. You want someone to be smart and capable, but also loyal and kind-hearted. In reality, a highly intelligent person's natural tendency to weigh every angle can make them seem less compassionate. A deeply compassionate person, on the other hand, can sometimes seem naive or less sharp. But this video, told from his roommate's perspective, filled in that missing piece of the puzzle. It established Leo as a person of profound loyalty. Here was a young man who, on a trip to a friend's house, performs an act of heroism. And for his reward, he doesn't ask for anything for himself, but for his friend's mother to see a doctor. It was a monumental help for his friend. Getting sick is a catastrophe for the poor. Even with government assistance, medical debt is a leading cause of bankruptcy. The illness itself is torture, but the aftermath, the lost income, the cost of temporary housing near a hospital, is a bottomless pit. The video showed these young men doing everything they could, giving money, arranging for hospital transport, helping apply for financial aid programs. There's a quick shot of form, and brief glimpses of the supportive medical staff. It was incredibly moving. For men of their generation, who held a deep, idealistic love for their country, seeing something so positive, so real, was stirring. They were the ones who most desperately wanted to see the nation and its people prosper. They were old now, but their hope for a stronger country and a resilient populace burned as bright as ever. They knew the conditions in some remote areas were still difficult. But this video wasn't a complaint or a plea for pity. It was a story of friendship, of hope, of young people facing obstacles and finding a way forward. The road ahead is hard, the future uncertain, but we keep moving forward. Leo finished pouring and, while they were lost in thought, discreetly captured a few more photos with his phone. Once the tea was finished, they went out to the yard for some fresh air. The heat of the day had finally broken. "All right, Mr. Foster, our star photographer," Professor Hoffman teased after a while. "Can we start? We've been sitting here so long the sun's about to set. Penelope always says the light at dusk is the best for portraits. If you keep adjusting, it'll be dark." Leo walked over, took a sip of water, and handed his phone to the professor. Hoffman took it. The screen showed the photo gallery. He swiped through the pictures. Well, I'll be damned. They were already done, and they were astonishingly natural. The angles, the expressions, all captured in unguarded moments. For the first time, he felt he looked genuinely handsome, not through some filter or editing trick, but just naturally himself. This was the man he saw in the mirror, but no one else had ever managed to capture it. He'd been so relaxed, waiting for the real photo shoot to begin, that all his usual tension was gone. It was like a couple who tries for years to have a baby, finally gives up and decides on IVF, and then, in that moment of surrender, conceives naturally. Hoffman passed the phone to Judge Cole. The judge adjusted his glasses. It was his signature move in photos, a nervous tick to hide his tension. Every picture he owned featured that same pose. But in this series, not a single one. It was just him living, drinking tea, watching a video, deep in thought, engaged in conversation, a look of appreciation on his face. He looked completely at ease. Seeing the photos, the judge was stunned. He could still be that relaxed, that at peace. It struck him then, with a jolt of clarity, that he really was retired. It was time to enjoy life. It was time to let go. It was time to see the world from a new perspective. "These are excellent," the judge said, his praise unequivocal. Truly remarkable. He had been bracing himself to strike a pose, but it was already over. Professor Hoffman took charge. "I'll start a group chat. Leo, you could just send the photos there, so the judge and I can both download them." Okay, Leo agreed. In the new chat, he saw Judge Cole's screen name was "The Highest Good is Like Water," and his profile picture was a grapefruit tree. Leo clicked on it. Yep, a tree heavy with green, unripe fruit. It felt so surprisingly down to earth. If Hoffman hadn't created the group himself, and some guy with a grapefruit avatar claimed to be a retired high-level government official, Leo would have shot back. "Yeah, and I'm the Secretary of State. What's up?" But as it was, Leo just smiled politely at the judge. "Judge Cole, would it be okay if I added you as a contact? I could let you know the next time I go fishing." The judge simply nodded. Leo sent the request. "The Highest Good is Like Water has accepted your friend request. You can now start chatting." Leo Foster. "Hello, Judge Cole. I'm Leo Foster, a senior at Northwood State. This is my number, 202-555-0199. Leo Foster. GIF of a cat comically sliding into a bow. "The highest good is like water. There is no need to kneel." The poached fish was spicy, numbing, and absolutely delicious. Professor Hoffman's housekeeper was authentically Cajun, and her cooking was the real deal. Leo had half expected a personal physician to show up and monitor the judge's meal, but no one appeared. It wasn't like the movies. Even powerful men had to pick peppercorns out of their own mouths. It was clear Judge Cole enjoyed spicy food, but he ate with restraint. Leo, being young and active, was the main event, eating more than the professor and the judge combined. The two older men watched in envy. "To be able to eat like that is a blessing," the judge remarked wistfully. He'd had a healthy appetite in his 50s, but it started to wane in his 60s. Now, past 70, he ate very little. Too much food just left him feeling bloated and uncomfortable. In his youth, he could put away half a dozen bread rolls and still feel hungry. Now, a single roll, broken into pieces, felt like too much. Just tasting the spicy fish was a wonderful indulgence, but he didn't dare have more than a few bites. Professor Hoffman's food was excellent, but the heavy, spicy Louisiana-style cooking made Leo wonder how the professor maintained his trim figure. It was probably the cigars and liquor that kept the balance. Penelope Hayes didn't make it back for dinner, leaving the three of them to a comfortable meal. The conversational dynamic was clear. Judge Cole's knowledge completely encompassed Professor Hoffman's, and Professor Hoffman's, in turn, encompassed Leo's. While the judge might be weaker in areas like smartphones and memes, those were things easily learned. He was just too serious. None of his younger relatives would dare send him a goofy gif. Leo's was likely a first. Professor Hoffman, laughing, spammed the group chat with a dozen of his own for the judge to save. Leo mostly ate, listened, and spoke little. The men even had a little wine, though Leo abstained. By the end of the meal, he felt like he'd learned a great deal and nothing at all. Their level was just too high, too far removed from his own reality. He could learn from Alex Young right now, but even if Judge Cole gave him personal lessons, he wouldn't know what to do with them. So he just ate his fill and answered honestly when asked a question. After dinner, the three of them went for a walk around the neighborhood to see Judge Cole home. It wasn't far. Out the professor's door, a left turn around a landscaped traffic circle, and 2 houses down. It turned out they'd met while walking their respective dogs. Professor Hoffman, with his social butterfly tendencies, had struck up a conversation that grew into a friendship. It was dark by the time they reached the judge's front door. Unannounced, it wasn't proper to go inside, so they said their goodnights. Leo and the professor continued their walk, completing a full loop of the sprawling, gated community. It took nearly an hour, neatly checking off his missed morning run. Alone with Leo, Hoffman seemed to relax even more. The conversation became less guarded. It turned out even Professor Hoffman felt pressure. Leo had assumed he was just naturally confident, at ease with anyone, no matter how powerful. But that wasn't the case. The realization closed the distance between them. You should really cherish being your age, the professor said with a sigh. When you get to my age, you start to feel the midlife crisis for real. Your hair thins, your body goes soft, you're always tired, and the pressure is immense. It feels like the whole world suddenly has it out for you. Leo was surprised. The great Professor Hoffman, having a midlife crisis? He seemed too self-possessed for that. I never used to feel it, but I had a minor surgery last year, and it just hit me. This feeling of being old, truly old. But then I see Judge Cole, still sharp in his 70s, and I figure I can keep going for a while longer. He paused. I enjoy being around you young people. It makes me feel like I'm still young, too. Perhaps it was the wine talking. After dropping the professor off, Leo was about to head back to campus when Hoffman called out. Wait, my wife's last project just wrapped, and the production company gave out gifts. There's a graphics card, a 4090 or something. You should take it. I know you students are into gaming. You can probably use it. Leo's refusals were useless. On the way back, Walt, the driver, loaded it into the car. And so, Leo traded 2 bundles of herbs for a graphics card worth over $2,000. During the drive, Walt brought up the driver's license again. Leo, I asked my army buddy, whenever you have some free time, I'll come pick you up and take you to the DMV to get your learner's permit. You just need to get your picture taken and do the paperwork. My buddy can help you log the required driving hours. You can take the road test in about a month tops. Leo thanked him, impressed by his efficiency. He'd only mentioned it in passing on the ride over. He had Walt drop him at the campus entrance instead of his dorm. He wanted to walk. Carrying his new graphics card, he strolled back onto the campus lights. The university was still quiet from the break, but the lamps were on, each one illuminating a stretch of the path, ensuring no part of the walk was ever completely dark. As he walked, he heard footsteps behind him, steadily getting closer. He instinctively turned. It was Jessica Monroe. Her outfit was something else, straight out of a sci-fi video game. She wore a white wig with 2 pointed horns, a silver crop top that revealed a strip of pale midriff, and matching silver shorts. Tall boots covered her legs, leaving a gap of exposed thigh. If it weren't for the familiar presence, he wouldn't have recognized her. All she was missing was a big, fluffy tail. Jessica had just gotten off the bus and had seen Leo getting out of a luxury car, a driver holding the door for him. She'd meant to hang back, to keep her distance. But watching him walk slowly ahead of her, she couldn't stop herself from speeding up. It was a public path, after all. She fell in a step beside him. Were you at a comic convention? Leo asked, curious. Yeah, she said quickly. She hadn't been. She'd been working as an assistant at a live stream event, dressed like this, standing for over 10 hours holding up signs and yelling product codes. But his question gave her the perfect cover. Leo noticed the large, heavy-looking bag she was carrying. Need a hand with that? He asked politely. It was full of products from the live stream. Employees were allowed to take home leftovers. Jessica, never one to be shy, had taken everything she could carry. She handed him one of the bags. They walked the rest of the way in near silence until they reached the fork in the path that split toward the men's and women's dorms. Leo handed the bag back. Jessica took her things, then thrust a small paper bag at him. I bought this on the way back. Here, have one. She had bought 2 roasted sweet potatoes. She hadn't eaten all day and planned to have them for dinner. But seeing Leo, some strange impulse took over. He took the bag, not knowing what it was, and watched as she practically bolted, disappearing like a glitching video game character. The bag was still warm. He opened it. A roasted sweet potato. He broke it in half and took a bite. It was sweet, incredibly sweet. The outside was charred and dark, but the inside was golden and oozing with syrupy nectar. For dinner, he had eaten more than half a fish. Then he'd walked for an hour with Professor Hoffman. And now, after the car ride back, he was polishing off a whole roasted sweet potato. At this rate, he thought, if he didn't start making some serious money, he wouldn't even be able to afford to feed himself. The student strip had a vendor who sold roasted sweet potatoes. Jordan loved them and would buy them sometimes. But they were expensive, nearly $3 a pound. A single potato could cost $5 or $6, and the big ones were over 10. None of them were ever this sweet, though. This one was perfect. Back in his dorm, he saw his hands were black with soot. He went to the communal washroom to clean up. The dorm felt empty and cavernous without his roommates. The senior dorms were always quiet, but during fall break, they were practically deserted. As Leo was washing up, a figure floated into the room, startling him. The figure was clearly startled, too. The fluorescent lights in the washroom flickered ominously. The person was wearing red shorts and was ghostly pale from head to toe. For a second, it was terrifying. Then, the figure's face lit up with recognition. Dude, Leo, it's me, Colin Edwards. Leo was speechless. He hadn't recognized him with his clothes off. He'd only ever seen the guy sitting down, hunched over his books like some legless NPC. He had no idea how tall he was, and just assumed from his wide face that he was heavy-set. But stripped down, he was surprisingly lean and pale. His whole body was 2 shades lighter than his face. What are you doing on this floor? Leo asked, trying not to stare. It was a bit awkward. Our floor is too crowded. I've been coming up here to the senior floor for a while now. Guess we just never ran into each other. You back early, huh? Yeah. Well, I'll let you get back to it. Leo had no desire to chat with a nearly naked guy. His sexual orientation was perfectly straight. Thank you very much. He beat a hasty retreat. As he was leaving, Colin stuck his head out of the washroom. Hey, what's your room number? I'll come find you later. Leo sighed. 402. You'd better put some clothes on first. The dorm room was clean enough, but it felt strangely large with just a minute. Normally at this time, Sean would be busy editing videos, Jordan would be gaming, and Alex would be walking in, finishing up a phone call. Thinking of Sean, he decided to give him a call. He placed a video call. After a moment, it connected, but it wasn't Sean on the other end. It was his sister, Sarah. She looked much better, her spirits more stable. She wore a white windbreaker that made her face look small, and her skin seemed fairer than he remembered. Most of her clothes, aside from her school uniform, had been black. Leo, she said, her eyes curving into a smile. My brother's asleep. Mom is too. I'm just out in the hospital hallway. Dad quit his construction job today to go get his back pay from the foreman. Oh, you think he'll get it? They're all from the same town. He should. Sean's dad wasn't educated. He got work by following crews of guys from his hometown. It was safer that way, but it also meant you didn't get paid regularly. You worked for a long stretch and got paid at the end. It was a system built on trust, which made it ripe for exploitation. Sean's dad had always thought it was a good way to save money. Now, with this emergency, he had no choice but to go and collect. As for Mom, Sarah continued, Director Shun came by again today. He said we caught it early and the outlook is good, so we shouldn't be too pessimistic. Mom's feeling a lot better. I think she's been talking to the other patients and understand her illness now. My brother posted a new TikTok today. He said his followers are growing really fast, so he doesn't want to miss a day. She rushed the words out, as if she were clinging to a lifeline. The hallway lights were bright, but she was in a dimmer spot, probably a stairwell. What about you guys? Are you eating okay? Are you staying in the room at night? The hospital cafeteria is cheap, and the portions are huge. One meal is enough for me and Mom to share. We stay here at night. They have these cots on wheels we can use, and the nurses gave us extra blankets. They've been really nice to us. Okay, good. Well, if you need anything, you can call me. Don't wake your brother. Just let him sleep. We all got back safe. I'm in the dorm now, all by myself. Leo panned the phone around to show her the empty room. It looked cleaner than she remembered. Okay, bye, Leo. You get some rest. Bye, Sarah. That new jacket looks great on you. And you have a beautiful smile. He ended the call. On the dark screen, he could almost see the small girl still holding the phone, waving a formal goodbye. She was so thin. His face filled the camera, but hers was just a tiny speck. Still, She seemed to be holding up. He felt a small measure of relief. On the other end of the line, Sarah Riley lowered the phone. She sat alone in the stairwell, leaning against the cold wall. She had lied. Her father hadn't gotten the money. He had gone out looking for day labor. Her brother was so stressed he had a cold sore blooming on his lip. Her mother seemed to have taken a turn for the worse. She let out a heavy sigh. She was a senior in high school. She was so tired. Staring at her phone, a tear slipped down her cheek. The hospital stairwell was dirty, littered with cigarette butts, but the concrete was worn smooth. She wasn't the first person to sit here. She wasn't the first person to cry against this wall. She unlocked her phone. Her screensaver was a painting, a wide prairie, distant mountains, bright sunlight, and a girl walking with a book in her arms. Leo had just hung up when there was a knock at the door. It was the NPC, Colin Edwards, freshly showered and fragrant. A thick, sweet scent, probably from the same body wash Jordan used for a while, wafted into the room. He was wearing an old t-shirt and shorts, his hair still damp, and carrying a bag of apples. The kid had manners. He actually brought a gift when visiting someone's dorm. He set the apples on a desk, and his eyes immediately locked onto the new graphics card box. Whoa, dude, is it a 4090? Oh my God, he squealed. Leo winced. Please don't make that noise. It sounds like I did something to you. Colin had just come to say hi and drop off some fruit, a classic networking move. His father was a professional middleman, a fixer who connected suppliers with big state-owned enterprises. In the boom years, his dad drove a Lincoln Navigator, mostly for chauffeuring executives. He would sometimes bring Colin along to meetings to drive and pour tea. Things had gotten tougher recently with the economic downturn and tighter regulations. The Navigator was long gone, replaced by a Buick. His dad spent his days bowing and scraping to powerful men, which was why he was so adamant that Colin get a good education and, hopefully, a government job, so he wouldn't have to live the same way. Colin, having witnessed his family's ups and downs, was more mature and pragmatic than most students his age. But he was still a 20-year-old college kid, and the sight of a 4090 made him geek out. Dude, I'm awesome at building PCs. You want me to install it for you? Leo had a desktop. When he first started college as a computer science major, his family figured he'd need a powerful learning tool and bought him a high-end machine. It turned out to be overkill. For running Excel, Word, or simple coding programs, it was unnecessary. Its main purpose became gaming. But then mobile gaming took off, and it was just more convenient to play on his phone. He could play lying down on the toilet while walking. His phone was now more expensive than his computer anyway. This semester, as his life got busier, he found he barely turned the computer on. The addiction had faded. Leo could have installed it himself. He was a comp sci major, after all, but a free pair of hands was a free pair of hands. Colin was methodical. He booted up the PC first to make sure it was working, then shut it down to begin the installation. This kid's going places, Leo thought. It was a smart move. He'd probably noticed the layer of dust on the tower and wanted to confirm the machine wasn't already broken before he touched it, saving himself from taking the blame. He worked efficiently, not asking for help once. He not only installed the new card, but also used cotton swabs to meticulously clean out all the dust from the casing. He was so thorough that Leo started to feel a little guilty. So, did you end up selling that stock? Leo asked. Yeah, I sold it after you said it was a bad bet, Colin said. I moved the money into something else, but I didn't have a good feeling about it, so I just bought into a blue chip. Figured a solid utility company stock never goes down. The mention of the company made a flicker of unease pass through Leo's mind. A memory of a recent news headline. You sure about that? Never goes down, doesn't really follow market logic. Leo offered gently. It's rock solid. I think it's going to pop after the break. The share price is high, so I couldn't buy much, but I'm confident, Colin said. Leo sighed internally. He had a feeling the kid would be back to do more free labor for him soon. Colin finished the job, tidied the desk, drank a glass of water, and left, leaving the bag of apples behind. Leo wasn't a huge fan of apples, but he cleaned out his own snack stash before leaving for the break. Not wanting to go to bed yet, he picked one up. It was surprisingly delicious, crisp, sweet, with a real apple flavor. With nothing else to do, he opened Steam on his newly upgraded PC. The front page was dominated by Black Myth, Wukong. The game was everywhere lately. He'd been gone for a few days and felt like the whole world had changed. A ferocious black monkey was suddenly the biggest thing on the internet. He thought about it for a second, then clicked buy and started the download. He had to do right by the new graphics card. The dorm's internet was slow, so he left it downloading and laid down. One of the perks of the holiday break was that the dorms didn't have a lights-out policy. The room was quiet. The group chat was quiet. He opened a chat with Stella and typed a simple goodnight. His phone buzzed again. It was a video call from Paige. Strange. He accepted. The screen filled with the face of a bald dog. Moose was whining and wagging his tail, trying to nuzzle the phone. Paige was wrestling with him in the background. She was at home, a spiral staircase visible behind her. She was wearing a pink, princess-style nightgown, covered in lace, with a pair of pink bunny ears on her head. Wait, are those Moose's? Or hers? Paige looked flustered, trying to pry Moose's thick neck away from the phone. When she saw Leo on the screen, looking a little confused in his dorm bed, she felt a sudden pang. He looked so good, so innocent. It wasn't me, she stammered. I was setting up my new phone, and Moose must have hit the call button. Moose's head was still trying to shove its way into the frame, barking excitedly. Coming from anyone else, Leo would have called bullshit, but from Paige, it was entirely plausible. She wasn't clever enough to come up with a My Dog video called You scheme. Has Moose gotten fatter? Leo asked. The dog looked even more barrel-chested through the camera. Paige subconsciously touched her own face. He hasn't. Oh, you mean Moose, she corrected herself, blushing. Yeah, my cousin can't walk him enough. He needs a lot of exercise, and he's been eating more, so he's probably gained a few pounds. She felt a little guilty, thinking about how hard Leo must have worked to walk Moose every day. Oh, by the way, she remembered my parents and my cousin found out about the horse riding accident. I got yelled at. They think it was my fault Shelley went riding. I started crying, and to make me feel better, my mom gave me her new phone. It's the latest iPhone. She bought two. She said I should give the other one to you when I get back to school, and she wants you to come over for dinner sometime. No, that's too much. Shelley already thanked me, Leo said quickly. That's what I said. And then my other cousin yelled at me. Crystal is so scary. When she gets mad, the whole house goes silent. Paige Kennedy, who are you calling scary? A voice drifted from off-screen. The camera spun wildly, catching a glimpse of a tall, thin girl in a white nightgown and glasses before the screen went black. Leo stared at the blank screen for a moment. He leaned over the side of his bed. The game was still downloading. He figured he'd wait up and play for a bit, but ended up falling asleep. On the desk, the game downloaded frame by frame. The desk lamp stayed on. Outside, the moon rose and set, and the stars wheeled across the sky. 6 a.m. Leo's eyes opened. He glanced at his watch. The hands formed a perfect vertical line. He checked his phone. 6 o'clock on the dot. His internal clock was getting scary good. He unplugged his phone. His parents had always warned him not to sleep near a charging phone, but now that they were smartphone addicts themselves, their chargers were permanently attached to their nightstands. The fear of radiation and explosions had been replaced by the fear of a low battery. The familiar mission timer appeared in his vision, a welcome sight. 6 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. Morning routine. Wash up, drink a glass of honey water. A happy gut makes for a happy day. He was still amazed by the precision of his waking time. It was uncanny. He got up and went to the washroom. The entire building was silent. The sky was just beginning to lighten. That time of morning was magical. One moment it was dark, and by the time he was done brushing his teeth, the world would be bright. He didn't know where the line between night and day was drawn. Using his own toothpaste felt like a luxury after the weird stuff at Sean's house and the tiny hotel tubes. After washing up, he went to make his honey water, but there was no hot water ready. Sean wasn't there to keep the kettle full. He poured some bottled water over a spoonful of honey, but it wouldn't dissolve. Giving up, he just ate the spoonful of honey and chased it with water, letting his stomach do the mixing. The pure sweetness was intense. A few minutes later, he made a trip to the bathroom. All systems were go. Traveling always messed with his regularity. An unfamiliar toilet was a powerful deterrent. He felt like he was carrying around a few days' worth of backlog. Clean and unburdened, he headed downstairs for his run. The campus air felt different than it had before the break. Less humid, with a cool edge to the breeze. A new timer appeared. 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. Morning run. A healthy body leads to a clear mind, inspiring ambition and maintaining an upward trajectory. He did some warm-ups on the track near his dorm. It had been days since he'd had a proper run, and he'd missed it. Running in Sean's village felt like performing for an audience of cows and sheep. He set off, his feet hitting the familiar pavement. As he passed the faculty housing, he wondered if Professor Reed was around. She rarely posted on social media, so he had no idea what she was up to. He rounded the corner and saw her. Professor Reed was there, but she had a sidekick, Dr. Croft. Normally, seeing Professor Reed in her gold-rimmed glasses, gently stretching under the trees, seemed perfectly normal. But seeing Dr. Croft beside her in a floral print dress, awkwardly mimicking the movements, was a bizarre sight. It looked like Dr. Croft after only a few days, was already being assimilated. All she needed was a pair of glasses on a chain. Morning, Professor Reed, Dr. Croft. The handsome young man in a white t-shirt and shorts called out as he jogged toward them. Dr. Croft, who had been swinging her arms like a chimpanzee, froze mid-slap. A handsome young man. Evelyn, you traitor, she thought. Oh well, might as well finish. She completed her set of stretches before standing up straight, resuming her human form. Professor Reed smiled. The familiar sight was back. She'd felt something was off with her workouts the past few days and had blamed it on having Dr. Croft around. Turns out, it was the absence of Leo. She'd actually missed him. Leo, you're back. I saw your TikToks. You had a good break. Your writing skills are quite impressive. She had followed Sean's account. She only followed 26 people, mostly family, friends, and educational channels. Leo, by proxy, had made the very exclusive list. We went to my roommate Sean's hometown. There's a huge horse ranch right near his house. The scenery is beautiful. Dr. Croft, who had been struggling with health issues for the past 2 years, looked envious. I saw you have a good foundation in drawing. If you're free this afternoon, I can give you some pointers. You could be my model. Leo's afternoon was wide open. It felt like overkill to have a master artist offer him private lessons, but he knew that relationships were built on this kind of mutual exchange. If you were of no use to others and needed no help yourself, it was hard to form a connection. Of course, Dr. Croft. Where should I meet you? I'll arrange for a studio for us, Professor Reed interjected. They set a time, and Leo continued his run. He just encountered 2 NPCs and received 2 new quests. Progress, 0 out of 100. He ran past the familiar fountain at the crossroads. No one was waiting. His heart skipped a beat, but his body kept moving. He ran along the path by the lake, the reeds swaying in the gentle breeze. On the far side, the red-roofed music building and the tall spire of the library stood against the morning sky like a painting. He ran hard, activating his time dilation buff. He could feel the tangible benefits of his daily training. The strength the system gave him was like a temporary boost, a catalyst that could fade. But the endurance he built himself day by day was real and lasting. Running disciplined not just his body, but his will. After running for what felt like an hour, he slowed his pace and started back. 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Eat breakfast. A man without gallstones or kidney stones is a healthy man. He decided to head to the student strip. The cafeteria food was bad on a good day. During the holiday, it would probably be serving leftovers from September. He'd had enough of the corner diner yesterday. He wandered around and was surprised to see that the lady from the legendary breakfast bowl place was open. She was a local favorite. Her selection was limited today. No fresh clams or sliced steak, but she had braised pork liver, frozen shrimp, and fried dough sticks. The thick, savory porridge bubbled in a massive pot. Today she was wearing a black long-sleeve top with lace cutouts, paired with shorts and her usual stained apron. Her impressive bust was, as always, a campus legend. Hey, handsome, what can I get you? 1 breakfast bowl with 2 extra dough sticks. I'll eat here. He sat at one of the small tables. He watched her expertly chop the crispy dough sticks, which she'd add at the last second, so they stayed half crunchy in the hot porridge. He used to be a little nervous ordering from her. But now, looking closely, he noticed she had tattooed eyebrows, eyeliner, and even lip liner. Her face was covered in a thick layer of pale foundation that couldn't quite hide the roughness of her skin from years of working outdoors. The artificial enhancements were obvious, but it was clear she had good bone structure. She must have been a real beauty when she was younger. Now, she was the beautiful, hardworking breakfast bowl lady. He realized with a jolt that as his IQ had increased, the fantasy in his head had faded. The breakfast bowl goddess was gone, replaced by a woman working hard to make a living. Intelligence, it seemed, was a cure for a romantic imagination. After eating, he stopped at a convenience store for some yogurt and bread to take back to the dorm. On the way, he saw Jessica Monroe running toward him, her long hair flying. Today's outfit was even more audacious. A green crop top and matching miniskirt. Emblazoned across her chest were the words Tide Pods. The designer of this promotional shirt was a true menace. Jessica was running late. She'd been up half the night, starving. She bought 2 sweet potatoes in the city, an act of sheer desperation that cost her nearly $30. She planned to treat herself, but then she'd run into Leo and, in a moment of weakness, given one away. One was not enough. She'd spent the night tossing and turning, telling herself it was just a diet. She swore she would never again let a handsome face cloud her judgment. She overslept, grabbed 2 ears of corn from the cafeteria, the only fresh thing available, and was sprinting for the bus when she saw him walking toward her. She slowed her pace, trying to catch her breath, but her chest was still heaving from the run. She stopped in front of him, and against her will, held out one of the ears of corn. "Morning," she said, her voice strained. "I bought corn. Want one?" Leo couldn't decipher her expression. She was smiling, but it was a complicated, pained smile. This girl was genuinely generous, but it was like she couldn't help herself. He felt he couldn't refuse. Thanks." She walked past him, wanting to smack herself in the head. What was wrong with me? Why did she keep giving him her food? It was like he had a superpower that siphoned items from her inventory every time he passed by. "Wait," he called out. She stopped. He couldn't just keep taking things from her. He held out the bag with the yogurt and bread he'd just bought. "Here, you take this. I already ate." Jessica saw the bus pulling up. With no time to argue, she grabbed the bag and ran. The bus driver saw her and waited an extra second. She jumped on, thanked him, and found a seat. She opened the bag. Inside was the yogurt, the bread, and her own ear of corn. A surprisingly lavish breakfast. Maybe it was a lucky day after all. She'd caught the bus, she had a full meal, and the weather was perfect. A row of birds chirped from a power line as Leo walked past one of the academic buildings. The sun was warm, and the birds were content. The campus was starting to fill up as students trickled back, probably worried about sold-out tickets on the last day of the break. At the front gate's mailroom, a large package was waiting for him. It was heavy. Back in his room, he opened it. Clothes from his mom. As if on cue, the moment he opened the box, his phone rang. "Honey, did you get the clothes?" his mother Tammy asked. "It's going to get cold soon. Don't try to act tough. You'll catch a cold." "I got them. They're new, Mom. Next time, you don't have to send stuff. Just give me the money and I'll buy them myself." On the other end of the line, Tammy Foster, who had been gearing up to brag, fell silent. She'd heard her son might have a girlfriend from a wealthy family, so she had dragged his Aunt Sky to the mall to buy him some nice, big-name brand clothes. It was a rare splurge, over $300 for 2 outfits. And this was the thanks she got? He wanted to buy them himself? Did he want some other girl to go shopping with him? After a moment of dead air, Leo sensed he'd misstepped. "It's not that I don't like the clothes you picked," he backpedaled. "It's just, I've grown taller. I was worried about the size." Tammy was not impressed. "I'm your mother. You think I don't know you're 5'8"? With a sigh, her moment of triumph ruined, she gave up. "Eat your meals on time. Wear a jacket when it's cold. Bye." She hung up before she could say something she'd regret. Now she needed to go find his father, Ray, and pick a fight just to get the frustration out. Leo felt a pang of guilt. He had a feeling his dad's day was about to get a little less peaceful, and it was his fault. He unpacked the box. 2 new outfits, much nicer than his usual stuff. They were from the mall, but his frugal mother had clearly bought them from the sale rack. He put the clothes away and got ready for his next task. 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Study English. Learning is the ladder of human progress. The more you learn, the more rungs you have to easily climb into a wealthy woman's line of sight. The novelty of the first stage of studying had worn off. It was starting to feel tedious. He wondered if getting a girlfriend who only spoke English would speed things up. But then he remembered movies where couples communicated just fine with their hands. He'd seen on social media that Dr. Petra Novak was on break, too. A true cinephile. She wasn't posting pictures of the Great Wall. Her feed was a tour of Sichuan street food. Spicy skewers, hot pot, rabbit heads, crispy pancakes. She had even commented on his horse riding video, a full English exchange. He could probably screenshot that conversation and grift some extra allowance money from his parents. Despite the difficulty, he grabbed his backpack and headed to a classroom. The girl he liked was still abroad. If he ever wanted to see her, he'd need to be able to speak her language. For that reason alone, it was worth it. On his way, he received the rewards for his morning activities. The breakfast reward was another scar and acne removal bonus. At this point, he was convinced he was some kind of scar-generating holy grail. His run had earned him a buff, enhanced memory, one day. Perfect. He found a classroom and was surprised to see that the other 2 occupants were already there. Colin Edwards, looking a bit heavier and darker with clothes on, greeted him and handed him a yogurt drink. The kid was smooth. He must have noticed last time that Leo didn't drink soda, but did drink yogurt. The gesture was so thoughtful Leo couldn't refuse. The other student, Wendy Lou with the round glasses, was also there, but she looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and swollen, a clear sign she'd been crying. Must have happened over the break, Leo thought. She probably went to surprise her boyfriend and found him with his new girlfriend. It was an old story. She managed a weak smile as he came in, a testament to her composure. They didn't speak. Leo put on his headphones and dove into his work, taking full advantage of the memory buff and the time dilation buff. His body felt restless if he didn't cram some knowledge into it every day. Across the room, Wendy Lou stared at her book as fresh tears welled up and fell onto the page. Leo had guessed right. She'd gone to surprise her boyfriend and gotten a surprise of her own. He was throwing a birthday party for another girl in a private room at a restaurant, complete with balloons and fancy cake. The girl, in a beautiful white dress, looked radiant. Wendy, who rarely wore dresses, was in a baggy sweatsuit. When she walked in, the room went silent. His roommates had met her before. She didn't know how she'd found the place. A gut feeling. She'd told herself he might be there with his friends. The hostess had assumed she was with the party and sent her right to the room. The pain hadn't really hit her then. It was hitting her now with a delayed, crushing force. She had been studying so hard to get into his graduate school. Now, that goal had crumbled into dust. She hated him, and by extension, she now hated that entire university. But all those months of effort, it felt so stupid to just throw it all away. So she had come here, to the classroom, out of habit, and then she saw him. That ridiculously pretentious guy, Leo Foster. He wasn't with his entourage today. He was alone. He sat down in his usual spot, took out his books, and just started studying. He was so handsome and clearly well off, yet he was completely focused without a hint of distraction. When he wiped her eyes with a tissue, sat up straight, opened her book, and forced herself to focus. Men will lie to you. Knowledge won't. She would work harder than ever. If someone who had every advantage was still trying this hard, what excuse did she have? A few minutes later, the system's voice sounded in Leo's head. Congratulations, host. You have made progress with the silver tier single woman, Wendy Lou. Affinity has reached 69. Please continue your efforts and strive for new heights. Wendy Lou, 21 years old. Net worth, $62,500 US, 1 Bitcoin, plus living expenses. Erudition, average 75. Appearance, average 70. Leo glanced over at the girl with the round glasses, intrigued. So she was single now, and surprisingly wealthy. A Bitcoin whale? This school was full of hidden talents. First the stock market guru, now the crypto queen. The most ordinary person in the room, it seemed, was the guy with the trophy husband system. And so, Leo Foster, the ordinary, not-so-confident college student, sat in a sun-drenched classroom on the 6th day of fall break and studied with fierce concentration. He memorized vocabulary, then listened to textbook dialogues on his headphones, reciting them under his breath. With his enhanced IQ, he now felt a certain disdain for the English language. What once seemed impossibly difficult now felt like just another tool. The best way to learn a tool was to use it. His current method of silent study was inefficient. He needed to be out there, talking to people, immersing himself in the language. He thought of Sarah on the prairie, shouting English words into the wind. Her accent might have been off, but she was speaking. She was learning the right way. He, on the other hand, was too old and self-conscious for that. He used the time dilation buff, breaking up a 4-hour block into 2 intense, 2-hour sessions with a break in between. It was the most efficient way to learn without burning out his brain. When he finished, he stretched his neck and looked out the window. It was only 9 o'clock. The power lines crisscrossed against the sky. Under a tree, a couple was locked in a quiet embrace. They would hold each other, pull apart, and then immediately embrace again. For a moment, Leo felt a profound sense of empathy. If Stella were here, he would do the same. A new mission appeared. 9 a.m. to 9:30 a.m., yogurt and fruit break. Work-life balance is a fundamental principle for any respectable trophy husband. Leo packed his bag, nodded to the 2 hidden tycoons in the room, and left. He drank the fancy P8.I yogurt as he walked down the stairs. At a landing, he nearly ran into the couple from under the tree. They were embracing again. He walked past without a word. The yogurt was finished by the time he reached the fountain. He felt like a player logging back into a familiar game, walking the same paths over and over, but his teammates were gone. He continued toward the library as a notification popped up. Host has completed the study task with thoughtful initiative. Reward, buff, fresh breath 1 day. Today's flavor is peach. Sweet and fragrant. Given the system's track record, Leo figured this either meant he was about to kiss someone or it was a consolation prize for the deep resentment he felt seeing that couple making out in the stairwell. He walked to the library, the imposing modern tower next to it a constant reminder of Stella. Its official name was the Vance Athenaeum. He used to think the name was a literary reference. He never imagined it would have a personal connection. The building was a lighthouse in his game world. Even with the system, he couldn't afford a single brick of it, let alone gift one to someone. It was visible, but unreachable. He entered the main library building. 9:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Reading. A book is a tool to build a soul. Victor Hugo. Pretty faces are a dime a dozen. An interesting soul is one in a million. An excellent trophy husband must possess an interesting soul. Read more, scroll less. He had to meet Dr. Croft for a drawing lesson later. All he had was the basic level 1 skill the system had given him. He needed to learn the fundamentals. He headed for the arts section. The library had a vast collection of art books, heavy volumes on Van Gogh and Picasso that cost hundreds of dollars but were free to peruse. It was oddly comforting to see famous paintings from the internet in their original context. He remembered Dr. Croft and Victoria Vance talking about Picasso, how his works were a rock-solid investment. Leo didn't really get it. The paintings looked like a child's scribbles to him. He flipped through books on European oil painting. The depiction of the human form was breathtakingly beautiful, especially the female nudes. Every detail was perfect, down to the posture of a foot. One painting of a young girl kneeling to drink water, her bare toes gripping the ground, was so vivid he felt an absurd urge to reach out and straighten them. The detail was more expressive than any photograph. Thank goodness the library was empty. If anyone saw how intently he was studying these nudes, they'd think he was a pervert. The campus rumor mill would have a field day. Some creep is in the library staring at naked ladies. He lost track of time, completely absorbed. With the time dilation buff, he devoured centuries of art history. This was the gift of the modern age, that a college student in a library could commune with the souls of long-dead masters from across the world. For a moment, he felt a connection that transcended time and space. When the system's notification chimed, his neck was stiff and sore. He leaned his head back over the chair, stretching the tight muscles. Just then, the mechanical voice sounded. Host has completed the reading task with great interest in the human form. Reward. Basic drawing proficiency level 2, permanent. Includes a specialization bonus for figure drawing. Requires extensive practice. A thought flashed through his mind. The system said he needed to practice drawing people, and the first person he pictured wasn't Stella. It was Ms. Miller. What is wrong with my brain? Leaving the library, Leo stepped back out into the sun. The weather was perfect, warm but not hot. A good rain would probably bring the first real chill of autumn. The next mission on his schedule wasn't swimming, but tennis. 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., play tennis. An adaptable sport suitable for ages 6 to 90. Show off your strong arms, quick returns, and agile footwork. Master this sport, and you can live the good life from youth to old age. The swimming pool was closed for the break. The system, ever practical, had adjusted. The tennis courts, however, were always open. It had even built in a half-hour buffer for him to find a partner. He'd played with Professor Reed once. She was a beginner, but he knew she was good at badminton. He thought about asking her, but she was with Dr. Croft this afternoon, and he'd heard Dr. Croft's health was fragile. He'd just find someone else. He went back to his dorm to grab his racket and change. Men didn't really have specific tennis clothes, not that he knew of anyway. Women, on the other hand, had the classic tennis skirt. He'd originally signed up for the tennis elective because he'd heard girls wore short, pleated skirts. In reality, very few did. Jessica was an exception. Even Paige had never worn one. The tops were too tight, and she was self-conscious. He figured he'd just head to the courts and hope to find another solo player. It was a lonely feeling without his roommates. He had plenty of acquaintances, but when it came down to it, there were very few people he could actually call on. He sent a message to the dorm group chat. When are you guys coming back? Jordan, I want to come back tonight, but my mom won't let me. Family dinner. I'll be there tomorrow. Keep my bed warm for me. Leo, get lost. Alex Young, I'll be back tomorrow. I can warm your bed, P8.I. Jordan, you get lost too. I want Leo. You're too much for me to handle, Alex. Sean Riley, I might be a few days late. Alex, can you cover for me with my internship supervisor? Alex Young, no problem. How's your mom? Sean Riley, she's doing okay. Director Shun has been checking on her every day. The doctors are great. She should be discharged in about a week. Thanks for asking. Leo, Jordan, Alex, get well soon, GIF. Leo pocketed his phone and walked to the tennis center. He could already hear the rhythmic thwack of a ball against a racket in the court. It was a heavy, forceful sound, like someone was working out some serious frustration. The center had practice rooms with a backboard wall you could hit against. They cost $30 an hour, a steep price for a student, but a steal compared to off-campus courts. The university hadn't cut any corners on its athletic facilities. If he couldn't find a partner, he'd just use one of those. He peered onto the court and saw a woman in a black tennis skirt, her back to him, ferociously hitting balls. She was powerful, focused, her movements explosive. The high ponytail she wore whipped back and forth with every swing. The black skirt against her pale skin created a striking contrast. She wasn't skinny. She had an athlete's build with strong, muscular legs and toned arms. Leo wasn't a creep, but the image registered in his mind with photographic clarity. As he was about to head to a practice room, the woman stopped, grabbing a towel and a water bottle, and walked off the court. She wiped the sweat from her face. Leo froze. It was Ms. Miller. Just an hour ago, while looking at those classical paintings, her image had drifted into his mind. She was the closest real person he knew to those soft, gracefully curved figures. She was always dressed modestly in long skirts or conservative outfits. To see her like this, in a short skirt and a form-fitting tank top that showed off a toned, flat stomach, was unimaginable. She'd even tied her hair up in a high ponytail. Laura Miller saw him at the same moment, and her face, already flushed from the exertion, turned a deep crimson. She'd gone home for the break, tail between her legs, and admitted to her parents that her marriage was over. They had been wonderful, but visiting relatives had been a nightmare. Within days, they were trying to set her up on blind dates, as if being divorced made her incomplete. She'd been set up with a loud, greasy owner of a local restaurant chain who immediately started asking about her preferred home decor style. Then came a mid-level city official, a neat freak widower who informed her that if they were to be together, they would need to have a child of their own to solidify the marriage. There was a third one waiting in the wings. She had fled back to campus in a panic. She felt like she'd been branded. The quality of the men she was being set up with was, apparently, a reflection of her own diminished value. The anger and humiliation had been suffocating. So she had come here to the tennis court to sweat it out. When she was a girl, her family had been well off. She played tennis for years. She didn't know how her life had become such a failure. Hit after hit, she poured her frustration into the ball. To hell with marriage, to hell with kids, to hell with blind dates. She just wanted to live for herself. When she'd looked in a mirror before, she'd seen a strong, beautiful woman. She wasn't old. She hadn't done anything wrong. The workout had been cathartic. She felt better, lighter. And then she walked off the court and saw him. The clean-cut, handsome young man, standing there with his own racket. He looked surprised. He paused for a beat before speaking. "I'm Ms. Miller." All the strength drained out of Laura's body. A moment ago, she had felt powerful. Now, her legs were weak. The outfit that had felt empowering in the mirror now felt impossibly revealing. She was suddenly aware of the waistband of her compression shorts, the straps of her sports bra, the heat rising in her face. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The sharp thwack, thwack, thwack of the tennis ball echoed like a heartbeat. Having a partner was infinitely better than hitting against the practice wall. Laura Miller was just getting into her groove, the initial warm-up done, her body loose and ready. This was when a workout felt best. Leo Foster took a few minutes to stretch. His current stamina stat was a 7, and with the athletic enhancement buff still active from his morning run, he felt pretty solid. Tennis was a sport he'd played casually for years, and he could even call on the system to correct his form mid-swing. He figured he was at a decent beginner level. Still, Ms. Miller looked like a pro, or at least she was dressed like one. The tennis skirt was striking. He couldn't recall ever seeing her in anything that didn't fall below her knees. This was the first time, and the skirt, ending mid-thigh, flew up with every leap, revealing even more. It made his heart pound and his mouth go dry. He didn't know why. Even seeing Jessica Monroe in her most eye-catching outfits didn't have this effect. Maybe it was the shock of seeing someone so familiar in a completely new light. Or maybe it was just the fact that she was his teacher. He tried to focus on the game, to pour all his concentration into the next return. But his mind kept drifting, especially when he saw the flush on her face and the intense focus in her eyes. By the time they finished a set, Leo felt like his willpower had been pushed to its absolute limit. A pencil skirt was elegant, but a tennis skirt was a different kind of weapon. He forced himself to be respectful, to be calm, to just play the game. Laura hadn't expected to run into Leo. She'd come to the courts to blow off steam, a storm of frustration brewing inside her. She'd been keeping up with him, watching his TikToks, scrolling through his Facebook feed. She knew he was back on campus. But over the break, a parade of relatives trying to set her up on dates had driven one point home with brutal clarity. A relationship with a student was impossible. Forget her own parents' disapproval. His parents would be livid. Yet she couldn't deny the strange, magnetic pull she felt toward him. It had started the day her ex-husband, Dave, had shown up, aggressive and entitled. Leo had stood in front of her, a shield, And in that moment, she'd finally broken free from the self-pitying victim narrative she'd been trapped in. She'd rediscovered her confidence. From that day on, she made a clean break with her past self. She bought new clothes, took time with her appearance, and found a new sense of purpose. If she'd gone home for the break looking like the same disheveled, abandoned woman, the blind dates her family pushed on her would have been even worse. A woman makes herself beautiful for the one who appreciates her. She was doing this for herself, to say goodbye to the old Laura. But she also knew how absurd and unrealistic it all was. Now that she was back at school, she hadn't reached out to him, no matter how much she wanted to. She was a walking contradiction. One part of her mind, the rational part, had accepted her new administrative role. The other, more wistful part, wished she were still his advisor, just so she'd have an excuse to talk to him. All that tangled energy, she poured it into the game. Swing, sweat, swing again. The rhythm of the court was a temporary escape from the messy, indefinable emotions. It gave her the courage to live her life. But it was like being on a frantic diet, starving for days, only to have someone place a sizzling, aromatic hot pot right in front of you. On the court, the neon green ball danced back and forth. They fell into a surprisingly natural rhythm, a seamless give and take. It was so much more fun than practicing alone. At first, Laura felt self-conscious in her outfit, but after a few minutes, she relaxed into the game. The distance helped. He wasn't right next to her, the court providing a comfortable buffer. As she focused on her swings, she felt a genuine joy bubble up inside her. Playing tennis really did improve her mood. A life of strict discipline and healthy living could get you a diagnosis of severe depression, but playing a game with someone you liked sent happy hormones flooding through your system. Her whole complexion seemed brighter. During a break, she even asked Leo to take some pictures of her. Photography was his thing, and he had to admit Ms. Miller looked incredible. Her skin was pale and smooth, her figure curvy and athletic. The simple black tennis skirt was perfect on her. It was an outfit that didn't suit someone rail-thin. It needed a little bit of softness, a hint of muscle, to give it that aesthetic power. Plus, after spending the morning studying master paintings in the library, absorbing composition after composition, Leo felt like his own photographic eye had sharpened. He shot with a sense of artistry, telling her to just play, to swing naturally and ignore him. Laura was a little shy at first, but she was a teacher, for goodness sake. She shouldn't be intimidated by a student. Besides, she could tell Leo genuinely appreciated how she looked. A woman knows when she has an advantage. She suppressed her bashfulness and tried to present her best angles. But it was that very combination, the faint, restrained shyness overlaid with newfound confidence, that was the most captivating. He took a ton of photos and sent them to her. A powerful swing, a candid smile, a turn of the head. Every single one was good. One was spectacular. As she was mid-swing, he must have called her name. She had turned to look at him, a radiant smile on her face, her eyes crinkling with it. The moment was captured perfectly. She loved every single picture. She couldn't believe how good she looked in his photos, better than she ever saw herself in the mirror. Each movement was captured with grace. Laura was ecstatic. After they finished playing, she almost invited him over for dinner, but then she remembered Cody was away. It would just be the two of them, and that felt a little too forward. "I brought a lot of food back from home," she said instead. "I'll leave some for you with Mr. Roberts at the faculty housing gate. You can pick it up this afternoon." "Okay, thank you, Ms. Miller," Leo replied. He was getting used to these offerings of food. It was starting to feel normal. They walked together, Leo carrying her bag while she held her racket. On the way, Laura asked about Sean Riley's family. She had been his advisor, after all, and knew his family situation was precarious. She also followed the guy's TikTok account and had seen Sean's post about his mother's illness. Leo felt a sense of ease talking to her. As his former advisor, she was the person they'd always gone to with their problems. He told her everything that had happened during their trip to Sean's hometown. "Sean will probably need to take a few more days off," he concluded. "From the way the doctor was talking, it sounds like she'll need dialysis down the line. It's tough. And his sister is a senior in high school this year." "Don't worry too much," Laura said kindly. "I'll give him a call later to check in. You've already done so much by helping with the medical bills." They parted ways at the turnoff for the faculty housing. Leo headed straight for the dining hall, which was nearby, and grabbed a quick lunch. Back in his dorm, he took another shower, changed his clothes, and settled in for a nap. Laura went home, showered, and ate her own lunch. Then she called Sean. She could tell how close he and Leo were from their videos. She didn't know Sean well, but through Leo, she'd come to see him as a sincere and hard-working student. "Ms. Miller." Sean's voice was tense on the other end. A call from a teacher was never not nerve-wracking. He half expected to be told he wasn't going to graduate. It felt like bad news always came in waves. Just like at his dad's construction site, they'd promised he could get paid any time, but when his dad went to collect, they claimed the money flow was cut off. They didn't understand what that meant. His dad just wanted the wages he was owed. It wasn't much, probably less than what those bosses spent on a single night out, but they wouldn't give it to him. Life was just that hard. Sean's hand trembled as he held the phone. Laura asked gently about his mother's condition. "She's doing okay," Sean said. "Leo found some connections for me, and the hospital here has been great. But the future..." His voice broke. He couldn't go on. He didn't know what to do. Maybe because Ms. Miller was an authority figure, someone who had always been kind, he felt the sudden urge to cry, but he was too ashamed. The words caught in his throat. In the face of her concern, he felt both grateful and utterly lost. "Don't worry about the future," Laura said, her voice steady and reassuring. "I have an aunt with the same condition. She gets regular dialysis, and she's just like anyone else. She even goes square dancing every day. I heard from Leo your sister is a senior. I've transferred to the main student services office, and I know our university has a support program for promising high school students. We can provide a grant to cover her tuition and living expenses for her senior year. I checked, and it's about $600 a month. It's a no-strings-attached grant. When she applies to college, she can go wherever she wants. Just send me her information, and I'll help you apply." Leo was just about to fall asleep when a notification popped up in his mind. Sean Riley's affection has increased by 1. Current level, 91. Sarah Riley's affection has increased by 1. Current level, 81. What happened? He picked up his phone and opened Facebook. The first thing he saw was a new post from Laura Miller. It was a gallery of her tennis photos. The caption read, "Life doesn't fail those who put in the effort. Keep going, Laura." Leo couldn't help but hit the like button. She looked amazing. Dave Collins was out drinking with his buddies, something he'd been doing more and more frequently. His new wife, Lexi, was pregnant, and he had no idea pregnancy turned women into such tyrants. One minute she wanted this, the next she wanted that. Weekly checkups at the hospital were exhausting him. One night, she'd woken him up demanding a specific brand of sour plum juice, and he had to go buy it himself. Delivery wasn't good enough. It was insane. When Laura was pregnant, she'd never been this much trouble. She went to her checkups by herself. Out with his friends, Dave put on a good face. A man making money, a new wife, it was all cause for celebration. He was always the one to generously pick up the tab, and everyone praised him for it. Back when he was just starting his business, Laura would stuff his wallet with cash, worried he'd lose face if he couldn't pay. Now, he was a successful business owner, but his finances were completely controlled by his wife. Since Lexi had been his accountant, she knew exactly how much he was worth. So he found himself drinking with old friends, but he wasn't always the one paying anymore. He could feel their respect for him waning. His wallet was just too thin. His wife kept him on a tight leash. As he was taking another swig of beer, a friend nudged him, holding out his phone. "Whoa, check her out. She's gorgeous." "Who cares who's gorgeous?" Dave slurred, already half drunk. "Let me tell you, all women are the same. They look pretty, but once you marry them, their true colors show." His friend, just as drunk, laughed and pushed the phone closer. Dave saw a beautiful woman in a short skirt. "Dream on," he scoffed. "She looks pretty, but she's got that arrogant vibe. She'd never give you the time of day. You can't handle that." "Dave, you're drunk off your ass," his friend said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You don't even recognize your own ex-wife." Dave snatched the phone. It was a gallery of 6 photos. A woman on a tennis court, wearing a tennis skirt, swinging a racket, smiling. Carefree. Beautiful. Just like when he first met her. No, even more beautiful now. For a second, he felt stone-cold sober. Then, he felt even drunker. He fumbled for his own phone and pulled up her profile. Nothing. She had blocked him. Damn it. His friend was still laughing beside him. "Hey, Dave, you're divorced now, right? My finances are solid. Your ex is a great woman. Good personality, generous, beautiful. You wouldn't mind if I asked her out, would you?" Dave's fist clenched. He threw a punch. His friend exploded. "What the hell is wrong with you, Collins? You picked that other piece of work, you've got no taste, and now you won't let anyone else be happy." The two of them started grappling, tumbling to the floor. The phone skittered across the sticky tiles, its screen still lit up, showing Laura Miller, mid-swing, smiling. Sweet and beautiful. Noon was quiet time in the hospital ward. Visitors were discouraged to allow patients to rest. Loud noises were forbidden. The sounds of grief were usually muffled sobs, hidden away in stairwells and by elevator banks, out of sight of the sick. For a family struggling with both illness and poverty, the world felt like a bottomless pit. The mood in the room was heavy. Despite all the help they'd received, Sean's mom couldn't shake the feeling of guilt. How could she be so useless, getting a disease like this and dragging her whole family down? Sean returned from his phone call. His sister, Sarah, was hunched over a textbook, and his dad was dozing in a chair by the bed. Finding temp work during the day was tough for an older man with no connections. He'd swallowed his pride and asked the hospital orderlies. For some reason, Mr. Riley felt comfortable talking to other blue-collar workers. He clammed up around doctors and nurses, the pressure too much. He always let his kids do the talking. One of the orderlies had told him the hospital sometimes hired temporary help for the night shift, delivering medicine and running errands. It was exhausting work, no sleep, and the pay wasn't great, but it was reliable. They had some money from relatives and friends, but they couldn't just sit around and watch it disappear. They needed an income to feel secure. So, despite the exhaustion, Mr. Riley had taken a job. The night shift mainly involved running supplies to the operating rooms. The staff was decent. They knew his wife was a patient and didn't give him a hard time. The other orderlies showed him the ropes. He learned that you could even make a little extra by collecting empty medicine boxes for recycling. But he was new and didn't want to step on any toes. The pay was $200 a night, which he thought was great. It was less strenuous than construction work. There were elevators, and the boxes weren't that heavy. The only catch was the lack of sleep. Last night, something unexpected had happened. An elderly woman had passed away. Her children were too afraid to move the body, so they'd asked him for help carrying her to the morgue. They gave him an extra $200. For a fleeting, shameful moment, he thought, if this happened more often, I could make good money. He immediately hated himself for it. The thought was poisonous. He was here to help his wife get better. Every other family here wanted the same for their loved ones. To wish for more death just for money was soulless. Forgive me, he muttered to himself. He'd stood outside the morgue for a while, chastising himself, the sound of distant weeping making his own skin crawl. He'd hurried back to the ward. The hospital at night was another world, but it was just as real as the one in the daytime. Working all night left him drained. He'd try to lie down on the cot in the morning, but with doctors and nurses constantly coming in for rounds, he couldn't get any real rest. So now he just sat and dozed in the chair, never fully asleep. When Sean walked in, Mr. Riley's eyes snapped open. Sarah looked up from her book, and his mom, though groggy, stirred in her bed. Sean told them about the call from his teacher. She's a truly good person, that teacher of yours, his father said, his voice thick with emotion. Are you close with her? Sarah asked her brother. Sean shook his head. Not really. I don't talk to teachers much, but she's always been nice. She's closer with Leo. He helps her out at her place sometimes. She's probably doing this because Leo asked her to. Sarah nodded, straightening her back. She was sitting on a small stool without a backrest, and she had to constantly readjust her posture. Leo is a blessing to our family, their mother said from the bed, her voice weak but firm. When you two are on your feet again, you must repay his kindness. Leo, the family blessing, was currently passed out in his dorm room. The sweltering heat of summer had finally broken after the fall break. With the window open and the ceiling fan oscillating, a soft creak was the only sound in the quiet room. His morning had been packed, a run, a game of tennis, studying in the library. He'd expended more energy before lunch than he used to in an entire day. He fell into a deep sleep almost instantly, his breathing evening out into a soft snore. Sometime later, a faint knocking sound penetrated his sleep. Groggy, Leo stumbled out of bed and opened the door. Ms. Miller was standing there. She looked like she'd just stepped out of the shower. Her hair was still damp, water dripping onto the silk slip she was wearing. The droplets darkened the fabric, making it cling to her skin. She stepped inside. Do you have a towel? She asked. Leo dumbly handed her his own. She took it and began to gently pat her hair dry, her arm raised. It was only then that he realized she had come to his dorm room in a light purple silk nightgown. From where he stood, he could see down the front of the slip. He caught a scent, sweet and fragrant, like a freshly picked apple. He wanted to get closer, to breathe it in. He leaned forward, and his eyes fell on the black lace of her bra. It was sheer, a transparent black that concealed nothing, the contrast stark against her pale skin. He stumbled back, landing hard on his bed. He felt a flash of confusion. His bed was a top bunk, wasn't it? But right now it was on the floor. Before he could process it, the towel hit him in the face. What are you looking at? She demanded, her voice sharp with anger. Leo tried to pull the towel away to apologize, but suddenly he was being pulled forward, his head enveloped in softness, pressed against her. His vision was obscured, and he felt her body settle onto his lap, warm and close, shifting against him. He opened his mouth to say something, but soft lips met his, kissing the tip of his nose, tickling him. A small sound escaped him, and then his mouth was covered completely. Sweetness, softness, an intoxicating tangle. His eyes were still covered, but he didn't want to remove the towel. Instead, his hands began to explore, tracing the curve of her hips, the gentle dip of her waist, the fullness of her breasts in his palms. He felt like he was floating. He opened his eyes. There was no towel. His head was buried under his own comforter. He was drenched in sweat, his clothes soaked through. He threw the blanket off, gasping for air. It had been a dream. In the dorm room, the fan continued its rhythmic, squeaking complaint. A senior in college, still holding back? I can only say that kind of guy only exists in books. Comment by Mountain_Man, 15 hours ago. My friend says this comment hurt his feelings. Reply by my_friend, 30+. The water rushing from the faucet in the communal bathroom was no longer lukewarm. It was bitingly cold. Leo stood under the shower, rinsing off for the second time that day. No wonder ancient masters in fantasy novels all wanted to learn dust-removing spells. Without a skill like that, you'd waste half your life just taking showers. The cool water shocked him fully awake. He changed into a fresh set of clothes his mom had sent, washed and folded. Khaki joggers and a white long-sleeve t-shirt. He put on his glasses, which gave him a studious look. He usually didn't wear them. His prescription was low enough that he could get by without, but they felt right today. Alex liked to wear non-prescription glasses sometimes, claiming they made him look more distinguished. Leo grabbed his backpack, a Gucci with the B emblem, a gift from Stella, and headed out. He found a blank white notebook he'd bought on a whim at the bookstore one day. Buying notebooks he never used was one of his minor vices. After rummaging around, he managed to find a few pens, none of them suitable for professional drawing. He walked toward Hargrove Hall. The building was one of the oldest on campus, its brick facade almost completely covered in ivy. Northwood State was a mix of new and old, and Hargrove definitely felt its age. It was the subject of a few campus ghost stories, the kind every school has. The soundproofing was terrible, but the windows were beautiful, dark green steel frames divided into small panes. Despite the creepy legends, it was a popular spot for students taking photos. The arched main entrance, with a vintage-style green mailbox next to it, was a particular favorite. Leo snapped a few pictures of the building to send to Sean, who was running low on content for their TikTok. Before he'd started, he thought going viral was easy money. Now he knew it was an endless cycle of shooting and editing, all for a trickle of income and a worrying amount of hair loss. In front of the entrance was a small, stone-paved plaza with an ancient banyan tree at its center. Its long, aerial roots hung down like a thick curtain. A low stone wall encircled it, providing a place to sit. Bored couples often sat there, braiding the tree's roots into intricate patterns. Leo walked past the banyan tree and the green mailbox, through the arched doorway, and up the worn staircase. On the second floor, the hallway was long and dim. At the very end was room 207. He pushed the door open and stepped into a stunningly beautiful classroom. The far wall was dominated by a massive, semicircular window. Despite being on the second floor, the room was flooded with light, thanks to the high ceilings. It was clearly an art studio. In his years at Northwood, he never knew a place like this existed. The room was filled with plaster busts, easels, and the faint smell of turpentine. The arched window perfectly framed the banyan tree outside, a tapestry of sunlight and green leaves. A cozy seating area with a sofa and a coffee table was set up in front of the window. In another corner, shelves were stacked with paints, canvases, and supplies. It was spacious, a little messy, and beautiful, steeped in a sense of history. Professor Reed and Dr. Croft were already there. Seated on the sofa, Dr. Croft finally looked like the artist she was. This morning, during her workout, she looked like a woman who'd given up, dressed like she was heading to a farmer's market, her hair a mess. Now, she wore a flowing, intricately cut dress that looked both comfortable and couture. Her hair was styled, and she wore subtle makeup. Professor Reed, as always, was impeccably put together, today sporting a pair of oversized, diamond-shaped reading glasses. They were sipping tea. Seeing that they were waiting for him, Leo quickly apologized for being late, even though he was actually 5 minutes early. Dr. Croft asked him to paint something for her, so she could get a direct sense of his skill and weaknesses. After getting their permission, Leo set up his phone on a small tripod to record the session and activated a new time-based task in the system. 14 to 1600 hours. Learn to paint. He knew how this worked. If he just went through the motions, he'd get a mundane reward like scar removal. He suspected the system counted his pores as scars, but if he was serious, he might get a one-day buff, a little taste to keep him motivated. Only by being truly dedicated, by having a genuine insight or breakthrough, would he earn a permanent skill. The system never said it outright, but it was subtly guiding him to take everything he did seriously. As he began to paint, he tuned out the conversation between the two professors. Sometimes you could glean incredible information from listening to experts, but he knew he was too far below their level to make use of it. He needed to focus on the fundamentals. He found an easel facing the window, the view breathtaking. He could see the ornate window frame, the massive tree, and the blue sky beyond. He thought for a moment about what to paint. He still couldn't figure out why he'd had that bizarre dream during his nap. Maybe it was from seeing all those nudes in the art books, followed immediately by seeing Ms. Miller in her tennis skirt. It was a chaotic, confusing mix, but the dream had felt so real. There was something he'd never even told his closest friends. His sexual awakening had been his middle school social studies teacher. She had an oval face, a tall, elegant figure, and flawless skin. She always wore immaculate, tailored suits and carried herself with a stern grace. Rumor was she came from a wealthy family and was dropped off at school by a driver. Looking back, that was probably an exaggeration, but in his adolescent mind, she was the real-life incarnation of the main character from Melina. Every time she looked at him in class, his heart would race. Then one day, she was gone, replaced by a skinny man with black-rimmed glasses, and the feeling vanished. But for a long time, she was the woman in his fantasies, mature, beautiful, distant, with perfectly tailored suits and elegant, pale calves. As he sat there, wondering what to paint, her image flickered in his mind. But her face was blurry, slowly morphing into the gentler, softer features of Laura Miller. It was a warm autumn afternoon. A young man sat before a blank canvas, undecided. In the end, he decided to paint an apple. On a plate before him sat several large, red apples. Their scent filled the air, rich, sweet, decadent. The fragrance of something perfectly ripe. He stood on the bridge, admiring the view. She stood on the balcony, admiring the view from the bridge. He was part of the scenery. He was painting. She was painting and painting. Professor Reed, wearing her reading glasses, held a thick book titled A Study in the Divergence of Geometric Forms. Only a professor could pair a book like that with afternoon tea. For anyone else, it would be a powerful sedative. The atmosphere in the studio was peaceful. Afternoon light streamed through the historic windows, illuminating the worn wooden floor. Brown, braided electrical cords snaked down from the ceiling to antique green lampshades, the electric light mingling with the sunlight. Osuin Ost. Croft began to paint. Her hair became a mess. She had a habit of pulling at it when she was concentrating. It was a good thing she wasn't a prolific painter, or she'd be bald by now. Leo focused on the apple. As a beginner, he could manage a basic still life. Getting the shape and shadow right was straightforward. But to paint an apple that carried a scent, that would require some kind of trickery. Spraying the canvas with apple-scented perfume, perhaps? The video on his phone recorded his progress. It also captured Dr. Croft in the background, painting him. She was painting a boy painting. Her true talent wasn't in portraiture. The paintings that had sold for high prices were all landscapes, filled with exquisite detail and texture. Her work was celebrated for its vibrant, lifelike quality, a sense of capturing a moment in time. Critics described Genevieve Croft's art as being as timeless and warm as a pastoral poem. In truth, Genevieve hadn't produced anything significant in a long time. After achieving success, she'd been plagued by illness. It felt like a cruel curse. Earn a fortune, then spend it all on medical bills. Her body was failing her, and even when she felt the spark of inspiration, she rarely had the strength to follow through. But worse than that, the spark itself had begun to fade. This trip to visit her old friend had been a godsend, and not just for her physical health. That was still uncertain. She half expected her next checkup to reveal another tumor, another trip under the knife. Last year, she'd spent so much time in the hospital that the nurses recognized her, even with a mask on. No, the greatest gift of this trip was inspiration. It came from Leo, this college senior. He had a unique kind of charm. It wasn't the polished, manufactured good looks of a celebrity. It was the simple, undeniable fact that he was a student. A handsome, clean-cut, sunny yet shy college student. It was a beautiful thing to witness. She understood that beauty was subjective, shifting with age and experience. She didn't need to chase what others found beautiful. She just needed to find what she found beautiful in this moment and to capture it. If she could translate even a fraction of what she saw and felt onto the canvas, it would be a success. Of course, it was never perfect. There were always flaws, but there were also surprises. That was the magic of creation, its unpredictability. When inspiration struck, Genevieve became completely absorbed. The camera recorded, and the sunlight shifted, casting new shadows across the room. She spent more time looking than painting, but when she did put brush to canvas, her strokes were swift and certain. She would study her subject, project the image into her mind, and then let it flow from her mind to her hand. Leo's process was less sophisticated. He painted what he saw, a one-to-one translation, adjusting the pressure of his hand by feel. That's why his single apple took so long, while her portrait of a person progressed so quickly. When Leo finished Dr. Croft was still at it. He got up to get some water from the seating area. Professor Reed was still engrossed in her book. Leo glanced at the page, saw nothing but incomprehensible diagrams, and quickly looked away. The process of painting had been surprisingly engaging. A bit tedious at times, but the view from the window was magnificent, and the atmosphere of the studio was inspiring. There was a unique satisfaction in creating something from nothing, watching a vibrant apple emerge from a blank canvas. Not wanting to disturb Professor Reed and expose his own intellectual shortcomings, Leo wandered over to see what Dr. Croft was painting. On her canvas, he saw himself. He was there, sitting at his easel, painting an apple. The light, the shadows, even motes of dust in the air seemed to merge with the space around him. It was magical. He had been proud of his own painting, but seeing it through her eyes was a revelation. In her painting, his apple looked even better, as if it truly carried a scent. But the most incredible part was her depiction of him. He was alive on the canvas, his expression focused. The details were all there, the glint on the leg of his glasses, the folds in his pants, the way his muscles tensed as he painted. The angle was from the front, but slightly to the side, capturing most of his face. It was as if his soul had drifted out of his body to look at this portrait. In that instant, he understood the vast gulf between his skill and hers. You had to have a little bit of knowledge to even perceive that gap. A total novice would just say, "Wow, that's good," without being able to articulate why. Leo felt that if he were to walk back to his easel, he would merge perfectly with the painting. Yet there were subtle differences. It was like looking into a flattering mirror. In Dr. Croft's painting, he seemed to have a more melancholic, richer inner life. He saw himself as a simpler person, but the painting gave him depth. The man on the canvas was even more handsome, not in terms of features, but with an indescribable charm, a captivating quality. It was as if the painting itself had a likability buff. For the first time, Leo understood the myth of Narcissus, who fell in love with his own reflection and died. Looking at the person in Dr. Croft's painting, he felt a similar sense of being captivated. Just then, a cloud passed in front of the sun, and the room darkened. Dr. Croft finally put down her brush. The beam of light she had been chasing was gone. She turned and was startled to find Leo standing right beside her. Professor Reed closed her book and came over to look. "I don't know much about art," she admitted, "but I know what I like. And this is beautiful." Genevieve stretched, a proud smile on her face. The more she looked at it, the more pleased she was. She looked from the painting to Leo and back again. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, she reached out with both hands and gave his cheeks a firm, affectionate squeeze. "Well, aren't you just a picture?" she exclaimed, her voice taking on a charming southern drawl. "If I were 10 years younger, I'd ask you out myself." It was a hypothetical, of course. She was not 10 years younger, and she was not going to ask him out. People often frame things in hypotheticals when they don't actually intend to do them. "If I were rich, I'd marry you." Leo's face stung. He was glad she was only joking. If a playful squeeze hurt that much, a slap would probably leave a welt. But her painting was truly incredible. He felt almost embarrassed to have her as a teacher. It seemed like a waste of her talent. He walked over and stopped the recording on his phone. Genevieve went to inspect his painting. She nodded in approval. "Very nice. The apple you painted isn't flat at all. It's rich, almost like a voluptuous beauty. You weren't having some impure thoughts while you were painting, were you, kiddo?" Leo stared at her, stunned. Could she really tell? No way. He'd only had that one fleeting thought at the beginning. Was she just teasing him? Seeing the mischievous glint in her eye, he figured she was. "It's a huge improvement from the last piece you sent me," she said, her tone becoming serious. "That one was beginner level. This apple has life. It's like you've jumped up a whole tier. You could probably teach a summer art class for kids with this kind of skill. Normally, this level takes a lot of practice, but your brushwork still seems a bit unseasoned. It's a contradiction. Maybe you're just a natural. Keep at it. I see a lot of potential in you." Leo was genuinely shocked. She could even spot his system-assisted shortcuts. The woman was the real deal. He nodded obediently. Paint every day. Practice, she instructed, then her accent slipped back in. All right, y'all, let's go. I'm craving some hot pot tonight. Professor Reed immediately shut her down. Absolutely not. You're on that herbal regimen. No spicy food. We're going home, and you're drinking that medicine you skipped this morning. Dr. Croft deflated. Professor Reed politely invited Leo to join them for dinner. The thought of another one of their healthy, bland meals made him shudder. He politely declined. He noticed a flicker of relief on Professor Reed's face. It had clearly been a courtesy offer. He felt his status had been elevated. She was now using polite social maneuvers on him. He almost forgot about the herbs from Sean's family. He pulled 2 bundles of the dried plants from his backpack and handed them to Professor Reed. It was a local remedy, something that grew everywhere back in Grassfield Hollow. A quick search told him it was often used as a tea to treat swelling and inflammation. He tried it at Sean's place and found it had a cleansing effect after a heavy meal. Professor Reed, who had done medical work in rural areas years ago, recognized the herb instantly and accepted it with a smile, happily handing the bundles to Genevieve to carry. In Professor Reed's presence, the celebrated artist was reduced to a bag carrier. They left the painting in the studio to be worked on the next day. As they were leaving, Leo glanced back. The portrait of him sat on its easel, looking eerily lifelike, as if a version of him had been left behind in the empty room. He snapped a picture of the strange scene from the doorway. After bidding farewell to the 2 professors, quest, befriend the NPCs, 85/100 complete, Leo was walking across campus when a new time bar appeared in his vision. 1630 to 1730. Learn to care for a pet. A trophy husband must be able to walk, feed, and manage pets. She brings home the bacon. You keep the house beautiful, walk the dog, cook the meals. Where is he supposed to find a pet? Moose was probably still at Page's. Just then, he heard a familiar woof. Woof, woof. A huge golden retriever came bounding toward him, moving so fast that its owner, holding the leash, was being dragged along like a water skier. Moose was ecstatic. He had finally been reunited with his hairless puppy brother. He hadn't eaten with the same gusto these past few days, even though he'd still managed to gain a few pounds. Moose slammed into Leo, nearly knocking him over. Paige Kennedy, his owner, was sent flying, landing in a heap beside him. For a moment, Leo didn't know who to help up first, the person or the dog. He chose the dog. He wrapped his arms around Moose, affectionately ruffling the fur on his head. Paige scrambled to her feet and started playfully thumping Moose's head. You are the worst. The absolute worst. That's it. You're getting neutered tomorrow. Bad Moose. Leo figured she was just bluffing to vent her frustration. Moose, oblivious, just panted happily. Then, Leo felt a tug at his pants. Moose had his cuff in his mouth and was pulling him toward the student strip. He'd tug, then run a few feet ahead, then wait, then tug again. He led them, circuitously, to the hot dog stand. The vendor, a man who bragged about buying a beachfront condo with his hot dog money, saw them coming. The usual, he called out cheerfully. 2 hot dogs, 6 sausages. Just 4 sausages today, Leo corrected him. The vendor looked at Paige. The little lady gets 2, right? Paige looked like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. Dude, do you have any idea why I always come here alone? No, he's wrong. I don't want any, she sputtered. That student of yours is really something, Evelyn, Genevieve said as they walked back. His painting is excellent, better than some of my own students. I'd love to take him back with me. Professor Reed smiled. Arthur Sterling said the same thing a while back. Said the boy makes tea better than any of his grad students and wanted to poach him. He's a smart kid, picks up everything so quickly. Except math, I hear. Well, Genevieve, I can't do math either. You can't ask for the impossible. And don't let Dr. Sterling get his hands on him. He'd be a bad influence. Fine, fine. Now let's go home and drink that awful medicine. Can't have tea while I'm on it, can I? Leo had really missed Moose. The big dog happily devoured all 4 sausages. Paige, too embarrassed to eat 2 by herself, handed 1 to Leo, insisting that the vendor had remembered wrong and she was only eating it because Leo had bought it for her. From his cart, the vendor muttered, "My memory is perfect. I bought a condo with this memory. I remember every customer's favorite order." Let's go, let's go. Paige hissed, practically dragging Moose away. They found a quiet spot on the campus green, and Moose took off, running in wide, joyous circles. Paige gave up trying to control him. Now that her secret was out, she sat down and ate her sausage with gusto. But she felt Leo's eyes on her. She thought for a second, then jumped up and started pounding his arm. What the hell? Leo yelped. What was that for? Don't you look at me. I'm not looking at you. It's just a sausage. What's there to look at? Paige's face turned bright red. Leo paused, noticing the pink of the sausage against her red lips, and suddenly he understood. What kind of stuff have you been watching? Your mind is so dirty. He honestly hadn't even gone there. She punched him a few more times, though with less force. Today she was wearing a navy blue sailor-style top with a matching pleated skirt, looking cute and energetic. Stop hitting me, Leo said, dodging a swing. Assaulting another woman's boyfriend is a crime, you know. Paige froze, her face a mixture of anger and frustration. She took 2 huge bites of her sausage, finished it, and tossed a small box at him before storming off. I'm going out with my roommates tonight. You take Moose home. My mom told me to give you this phone. Moose didn't even seem to notice her departure. He was living for the moment, and this moment was about freedom. His owner would be back tomorrow. Freedom was fleeting. Leo sat on a bench, watching Moose run along the lakeshore as the sun began to set. He took a few deep breaths to calm his racing heart. He felt like he'd been seeing the world through a different lens lately. His libido was through the roof. Before, he might have noticed a pretty girl, but he wouldn't have let his imagination run wild. But ever since that night with Stella, it was like a switch had been flipped. He couldn't look at anyone without his thoughts straying. It was frustrating. He felt like Stella had unlocked some primal force within him and then just left. His integrity was hanging by a thread. He opened his messaging app. His last message to Stella was still there, unread. He sent her the picture of Dr. Croft's painting of him, along with the photo she'd taken of him standing outside the studio. The messages remained unread. He put his phone away as Moose trotted over, licking his hand, nudging him to play. He spent the next hour throwing a crinkled water bottle for the dog, who loved the game. When it was time to go, Moose refused, planting his 100-pound frame on the grass. A wild idea popped into Leo's head. Could the time dilation buff work on other creatures? He tried activating it on Moose alone, but nothing happened. Then he tried running with Moose and activating it. It worked, but the effect seemed halved. A 10-minute run felt like 20 minutes for both of them, not 40. The total duration was constant, just split between them. Another, even bolder idea surfaced. If he was in the middle of something fun, could he share the effect? Extend it. He couldn't resist. He opened his phone and fired off a series of messages to Stella. When are you coming back? I miss you. I miss you. I miss you. A moment after sending the messages, Leo was already regretting it. He remembered Alex, young, dating a girl back in sophomore year. She was gorgeous, a student from the honors college, but she was incredibly clingy, sending him 50 texts a day. Alex had broken up with her after a month, saying he couldn't stand it. At the time, they'd all called him an idiot. Now Leo kind of understood. It had been more than 3 minutes. He couldn't retract the messages. Oh well. He managed to coax Moose home. As the last rays of the setting sun painted the sky gold and red, they walked back to the dog's off-campus house. Moose, tired and happy, gave Leo a lazy wave of his paw as if to say, okay, you can go now. Leo felt a pang of indignation. So, a little extra playtime with the time dilation buff. And now he was being dismissed? He stopped by the faculty housing gatehouse to pick up the food from Miss Miller. Hey, Leo. Mister. Robert called out. What did you get up to over the break? Horseback riding, fishing, hiking, Leo replied. Sounds nice. You know how to fish? A little. I'll take you out sometime. There's a great spot nearby. Sound good, mister? Roberts. Just let me know. Leo hoisted a heavy box onto his shoulder and said his goodbyes. It was surprisingly heavy for a box of food. How had Ms. Miller carried this? Back in his dorm, he opened it. Inside were only 2 bags of food, some delicious-looking roast goose, and a box of pastries, both vacuum-sealed. The rest of the box was filled with a beautiful tea set, a pot, cups, a canister of tea, and a sleek Bodum electric kettle. There was also a book, The 48 Laws of Power. He sent a picture to Ms. Miller, wondering if he'd gotten the wrong box. Her reply came instantly. Nope, it's for you. I know you like tea, so I got you a proper set. I'm not your advisor anymore, so I can't get you in trouble for using it in your room. Leo chuckled. Thanks, Ms. Miller. He cleared off the communal table in their suite, laid down a white cloth, and arranged the new tea set. He filled the kettle, and as the water heated, he opened the tea. It was an 8-year-aged white tea, fragrant and delicate. He brewed a pot just for himself. It was the first time he'd ever done that, and the simple ritual felt calming, centering. It was the perfect moment to read. He realized that since he'd started his daily reading habit, his entire perspective had shifted. Before, he just played video games and scrolled on his phone, his worldview shaped entirely by his roommates and the campus bubble. He learned about gut health, about the life of a disabled writer who refused to give up, about the history of art. He'd read the biographies of tech moguls and oil barons. He'd even learned about postpartum care for sows. Each book was a new world, a conversation with a different time and place, slowly chipping away at his own ignorance. Reading was a shortcut, a way for an ordinary person to see beyond their immediate surroundings. The fan whirred overhead. In the hallway, he could hear the sounds of students returning from the break. Dude, Black Myth, Wukong is so hard. I'm stuck on the third boss. Did you find an internship yet? My uncle got me a spot at a logistics company. Want to pull an all-nighter gaming? They won't cut the power tonight. Count me in. Leo sat in his room, sipping his tea, and opened the 48 Laws of Power. This was his kind of all-nighter. Delivery for Leo Foster, room 402. Leo had just started his third infusion of tea. The water from the tap wasn't ideal, but it was better than the city water. The tea was sweet and fragrant. He'd only gotten a few pages into the book. It was dense and a bit esoteric. Even with his increased intelligence, he was struggling to grasp some of the concepts. Just as his mind started to wander, his phone rang, saving him from having to wrestle with it any longer. At the dorm entrance, a FedEx driver was waiting. It was the only delivery service that had a deal to get past the main campus gate. All the others had to drop packages at the student mail center. The driver, who was starting to recognize him, handed over a large box with a smile. It definitely wasn't the electric razor he'd ordered online. Back in his room, he opened a cardboard box to find a handsome wooden case inside, embossed with the word Rembrandt. He lifted the lid. Inside were rows of what looked like small, colorful tubes of toothpaste, along with bottles of oil, palette knives, and brushes. It was a professional oil paint set. He remembered from his childhood art classes that good supplies were incredibly expensive. He'd only ever made it to watercolor, but he knew oil paints were on another level. He searched for the brand online and found a 41 color set selling for over $7,000. This one had 60. This had to be from Stella, but her messages were still silent. He tried calling, but it went straight to voicemail. He had just finished cleaning up the packaging when his phone rang again. Another delivery. He took the empty boxes down with him and met a different courier at the gate. This package was from overseas. It had to be her. He brought it back up to his room. Inside was a scarf. It was incredibly soft, cool to the touch, and a beautiful cream color. There was no tag, just a small, embroidered Z at the very end. He was just about to start a load of laundry when his phone rang for a third time. Another package. A small thrill of anticipation shot through him. He was starting to understand the feeling. This was how Stella operated, with unexpected, delightful surprises. She was a study in contradictions, a rule follower who raced motorcycles, a cool exterior hiding a warm heart. This flurry of gifts, even without a single text message, was enough to make him giddy. In love, it turns out, he was very easy to please. He sent a quick update to the dorm group chat. Got another gift. Heading down to get the third one now. Jordan replied instantly. Dude, she's a keeper. I want to marry her. That scarf, BTW, is Zegna. It's made from Vicuña wool. It's like 18 grand. Alex added, you're done for, man. The enemy's offense is too strong. Leo tried to keep a straight face, but he couldn't stop the grin from spreading across his face as he walked back to the entrance. He went downstairs, expecting to see another package. Instead, he saw a girl standing just outside the door. Her hair was a glossy, raven black, cut into a chic, razor-straight bob. It was a new style for her. She had a small, heart-shaped face and skin as pale as porcelain. She was wearing a white knit polo and long, straight-leg jeans. In that moment, no gift in the world could compare to her. A wave of pure joy washed over him. He didn't need to ask how or why. He just closed the distance between them and pulled her into a hug. It was a solid, real embrace, not a dream. He held her tight, and as he breathed in her scent, he felt the entire world settle into place. His heart, which had been floating in a sea of uncertainty, had finally found its anchor. How do you miss someone? The most immediate answer is to hold them, to feel their skin, touch their face, kiss their lips, hold their hand. They walked from the dorm entrance to the track, their hands intertwined. They didn't need to speak. Just holding her hand was enough. In the early stages of a relationship, there's a kind of skin hunger, a constant need for physical contact. Just holding hands could fill you with an overwhelming sense of happiness. In that moment, Leo couldn't understand how Alex had dated so many people. One was enough. This one was enough. This feeling was irreplaceable. They walked and walked, eventually finding themselves at the small gazebo on the hill near the old campus cemetery. Thankfully, it was deserted. As soon as they were under its roof, he pulled her into his arms. The night was warm, and so was she. He didn't need to be taught what to do next. He found her lips and kissed her, a desperate, hungry kiss that was more like a claiming. When you were filled with this much desire, logic fell away and instinct took over. He was like a wolf pup, nipping and licking, wanting to leave his mark all over her. Stella had wanted to surprise him. She'd seen his messages, but had resisted the urge to reply. A surprise isn't a surprise if you know it's coming. This was the first time she'd ever been in a serious relationship. She was a solitary person by nature. Even now, as a senior, her relationships with her roommates were polite but distant. But with him, she felt a powerful connection. She loved the sound of his voice. Just seeing him brought her joy. When he was happy, she felt a deep sense of satisfaction. When they'd been together constantly, she hadn't fully appreciated it. But being an ocean away had amplified her feelings. She found herself distracted, the famous sights she was supposed to be marveling at seeming dull and unimportant. The feeling had peaked when she'd lost her things. Stranded and lost in a foreign country, she had felt a profound, helpless panic. For a moment, she thought her mother might even relent and let her come home. But then her father had flown in, and his presence had shored up her mother's resolve. The small crisis had an unexpected side effect. It seemed to thaw the years-long Cold War between her parents. The rest of the trip became a family vacation. With her father around, Stella was more reserved. He was harder to read than her mother, who was a soft touch beneath a stern exterior. So Stella had made an excuse and flown back early, leaving her parents to have a second honeymoon. But seeing him now, all her carefully constructed plans to be the cool, detached hunter in their relationship evaporated. She let him lead her by the hand, her heart pounding in anticipation. He tasted like peaches. Before meeting him, she'd brushed her teeth and used an orange-flavored mouthwash. She had prepared for this, but his kiss was sweet and soft. She wondered if it was his toothpaste. Whatever it was, she wanted to buy it. From now on, that scent would forever be linked to this moment. They were tangled together, lost in a world of their own. They only broke apart when the need for air became desperate. She found herself straddling his lap, her arms wrapped around his neck. It was a position he seemed to favor, one that made her feel completely enveloped by him. She leaned in, kissing his forehead, the bridge of his nose, his lips, his chin, his neck. When she reached his Adam's apple, she flicked her tongue out, tasting him. Leo tilted his head back, one hand on her waist, the other sneaking under her knit shirt. With a deftness that surprised even himself, he unhooked her bra with one hand. He closed his eyes, surrendering to the sensation of her. He couldn't let her keep kissing him like that. He was losing control. He needed to be the one in charge. He took her mouth with his own. Just a moment ago, he had been putty in her hands. He recalled Alex's advice. The one who falls harder is the one who gets hurt. He always felt like he was the one falling faster. He needed to pull her down with him. He kissed her slowly, tenderly, until he felt the tension leave her body and she melted against him. "Did you miss me?" he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "No," she whispered, the denial automatic, her face flushed. "Really?" He pulled back to look at her, his gaze steady. He watched as her eyes grew wet, the rims turning pink. To think that your work is important is a symptom of neurosis. Bertrand Russell. Leo had stumbled across that quote in the library this morning. It hadn't meant much then, but now it was echoing in his mind. To think you're important is also a symptom of neurosis. And in love, you always think you're the most important person in the world. Important enough that your partner can't go a second without you. But that wasn't true. Everyone had their own life. Not even in the hormone-fueled beginning could you be together every second. He didn't want to be a stopgap for Stella, a temporary fix for her loneliness before she left the country for good. The flood of expensive gifts only intensified that fear. He felt like he was always the one at a disadvantage. He, who had never even had a girlfriend before, was now navigating this. Whatever it was. After their night at the St. Regis, he felt like she had marked him as hers. Since then, other attractive women, like Paige or Ms. Miller, just didn't register on the same level. He could appreciate their beauty, but there was no spark, no temptation. But how much did Stella really like him? If he were a billionaire, he could casually gift cars and houses to any pretty girl who caught his eye. When you have that much money, it ceases to be important. He couldn't let himself be blinded by expensive gifts, thinking they equated to love. There were countless guys out there who were richer, smarter, and better looking than him. Once she was out in the world, she would meet them. Tonight, Stella had given him a wonderful surprise, but it had also filled him with a new sense of insecurity. It was only now, with her limp and breathless in his arms, her eyes red-rimmed and hazy, that he felt a sense of security. It was a possessive, almost morbid thought. Maybe the only true security was being reduced to ashes together, side by side in a box. They couldn't do much more in a public gazebo. The thrill of being almost caught was exciting, but it had its limits. He had only meant to tease her, to get a little revenge for her days of silence. Seeing the tears welling in her eyes, he softened, his kisses becoming gentle, his embrace protective. They held each other for a long time, the intimacy more comforting than passionate. The sounds of other students returning to campus drifted up from the path below, adding a layer of illicit excitement to their clandestine meeting. Finally, it was Stella who broke the spell. She grabbed his wandering hand and pinned it beneath her, holding it still. A moment later, she blushed and stood up. "Let's go." They walked back, hand in hand, finally able to talk. He told her about his trip to see Sean's family, about meeting Shelley and her family, and about the car they had given him. He saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a brief flash of insecurity. She hadn't even given him a car yet, and someone else had beaten her to it. Stella had always been confident, her self-assurance bolstered by her family's wealth. She knew money was one of her advantages. It gave her control, the ability to orchestrate their dates, to shower him with gifts. But now, faced with a potential rival, she felt a prickle of unease. "I lost my phone in Switzerland," she said, her voice casual. "And I accidentally lost the watch you gave me, too. Can I give you a new one to replace it?" "We can. Swap again." She held out a box. Leo recognized the name on it, Patek Philippe. The watch face was a soft-cornered square, understated and elegant, far more subtle than a Rolex. Having gotten his fill of kisses, Leo was feeling very agreeable. "Whatever you want," he said with a smile. "You're the boss." The evening breeze was a strange mix of warm and cool. For new couples, time always seemed to vanish. Leo felt like he'd just stepped out of his dorm, but in the blink of an eye, it was almost curfew. As much as he wanted to stay wrapped up in her, to not go back at all, they weren't at the stage where they'd just grab a cab to a hotel. The desire was there, but they were still young, still holding on to a bit of restraint. It was that very restraint that made every moment feel charged, more beautiful. People who'd done it 1,000 times might just meet at the hotel, strip down first thing, and not even want to talk afterward. A relationship can only move forward. You can't go back, can't start over. It was best to savor every experience, because once you've lived it, it's never the same again. They found themselves back at the fountain. This time, Leo asked her, "Can I walk you to the entrance of the women's dorm complex?" Stella nodded, and they stole a little more time together, another stretch of pavement under their feet. It was the first time Leo had walked a girl this way. You had to cross a small bridge, then cut across a massive athletic field with a full-size running track before reaching the gates to the women's dorms. The area was huge, nothing like the guys' side, which was just a few basketball courts crammed between the dorms and the nearest academic building. The landscaping over here was better, too, and he could see several more basketball courts inside the complex. Not many women played basketball, yet their dorms had courts to spare. A little unfair, maybe. He vaguely remembered a post on the campus forum about it. Guys complaining that the women's housing was more spacious with better scenery. The women firing back that the guys' dorms were right next to the lecture halls, while they had a long trek every morning. Between getting ready and the long walk, they probably lost a good half-hour of sleep compared to the men. The argument went nowhere, of course. You couldn't just swap housing complexes. The fences around the women's dorms were higher, more secure. The guys' dorms backed up against a wooded hill. In theory, someone could slip in from there. Leo wasn't a go-to guy in his classes like Sean. If a girl asked him for help, he'd usually say no. He wasn't eager to please. Everyone's got their own stuff to deal with. After one or two refusals, people stopped asking. Establishing that boundary early was important. Sean, who never said no, was treated like a workhorse, constantly being asked to do manual labor. Alex, while helpful, was never asked to move things. Girls would ask for his help with more strategic tasks, like setting them up with someone. And Jordan. If Jordan started whining, the girls would probably end up helping him move his stuff. In the end, only Sean had unlocked the achievement. Beast of burden. Once a workhorse, always a workhorse. Leo was curious about this side of campus. Girls were trickling back to the dorms, many of them dressed up, but none of them held a candle to Stella. They walked hand in hand, slowly, until they reached the entrance. Some sadist of a dorm supervisor had installed 2 massive, blinding floodlights right at the gate. Who would dare kiss or hug under that kind of interrogation room glare? Even a security camera would be better. No, wait. On closer inspection, there was a camera right under the floodlights. Of course. Well played, Leo thought. I'm out. He said his goodbyes to Stella. Under the combined assault of the spotlight and the camera, any further affection felt impossible. It was just a quick farewell. No wonder he'd seen other couples lingering on the path, dragging their feet. They were the veterans. They knew what was waiting. Leo watched until Stella disappeared inside, then turned and broke into a jog. Any later, and the men's dorm would actually be locked, and he'd have to get an earful from the security guard. On the path, he saw another guy practically sprinting in the same direction. He looked young and full of life, a fresh crop of acne on his chin suggesting he was a freshman. The kid was walking so fast, he broke into a spontaneous, joyful leap. It was pure, unadulterated happiness. Leo felt a pang of envy. Before the system had started boosting his intellect, he was probably just like that, blissfully, stupidly happy. After the upgrades, he found himself overthinking things, the sharp edges of joy often dulled by analysis. He even missed the days of his own dumb bliss. Now, he was prone to bouts of melancholy. The upgrades definitely had side effects. He'd once thought that if he had enough points, he'd pour them all into intellect. Max it out. Be invincible. But then he thought about some of the real-world geniuses. Stephen Hawking, Einstein. They were titans, but they all had their own struggles, their own immense burdens. The university had tried a special program for gifted students once, but it fizzled out. Humans are social creatures. To be so far ahead of everyone else is to be alone, to be an outcast. It leads to loneliness, to depression, to a life that's no longer normal. Being just a little smarter than your peers brings rewards. Being vastly smarter brings a profound isolation. Tonight, in his slightly down mood, watching the jumping freshman, Leo felt an impulse to leap himself. But then he saw the kid finish his jump with an imaginary basketball shot, his flashy digital watch glittering on his wrist. Two girls walking by giggled as they scurried past. Leo winced. Nope, he couldn't do it. Too cringy. He glanced at his own hand, at the new watch on his wrist. It was strange. The first time Stella had given him a watch, he'd been ecstatic. No one had ever given him something like that before, something you wear on your body. It felt intimate, close. But this second time, judging by Stella's expression, this watch was far more expensive than the last one, yet he didn't feel that same initial rush of joy. The first time really is the most precious. The second time is always just a little less. Of course, it was also a matter of his own ignorance. He recognized a Rolex, but he had no idea what a Patek Philippe was. Most people didn't. The kind of person who wears a Patek Philippe is probably showing it off to the person wearing a Rolex. In front of a Patek, a Rolex is just nice. He jogged back to his dorm just as the guard was getting ready to lock the door, avoiding a lecture. College kids have thick skin. A scolding from the dorm staff usually rolled right off. But that thickness seemed to thin with age. By senior year, getting chewed out felt genuinely embarrassing. As a freshman or sophomore, you could just laugh it off. Junior year, it started to sting. Senior year, it was downright humiliating. Probably because by then, you were the old man on campus, and you weren't used to being talked down to. Once you graduated and entered the workforce, you became a rookie all over again, and your tolerance for getting yelled at would probably reset to factory settings. Back in his room, the lights were still on. He'd only meant to run down, grab his stuff, and come right back up. He never expected to be gone for so long. The room next door was dark, but the one 2 doors down was lit. A guy came out holding a wash basin and saw him. Leo, I just knocked on your door, but no one was there. You just getting back? Yeah, it's just me tonight. The other guys are back tomorrow. What's up? Nothing much. I'm the only one in my room, too. Just wanted to see who was around. The guy was in his major, but a different class section. The people still on campus this late in the break were either the ones with connections and jobs lined up, the ones grinding for grad school or civil service exams, or the ones who had given up and didn't care. This guy, Gavin, was in the first category. His family had hooked him up with something. They owned some kind of agribusiness, Leo thought. There weren't many secrets among students. Unless you were as guarded as Alex, most people spilled their life story during casual conversation. Gavin already had his internship locked down, so he could have gone home. But his girlfriend, who was also in their major, hadn't found one yet, and she was from Bridgeport and didn't want to leave. So he was staying on campus to be with her. They'd probably break up after graduation due to family or location, one of those classic college relationship endings. But graduation hadn't happened yet, and for now, they were avoiding that cruel reality. A few minutes later, Gavin showed up at his door. Leo offered him an apple, one of the ones Colin Edwards had given him. Gavin took it without hesitation and started munching away. Seeing Leo's happy, just made it before curfew glow, Gavin grinned. Heard you're seeing someone, man. How's it going? Need me to drop some relationship knowledge on you? Leo pushed his bangs out his eyes and leaned forward with mock seriousness. I'm all ears, Gavin. Lay it on me. First, Gavin began, you've got to be generous. Whatever money you have, spend it on her. Spend it all. It's not like we have much anyway. Leo thought for a second. Stella is definitely generous. Second, You have to be good at creating surprises. An unexpected date, something out of the blue. Check. Stella is full of surprises. Third, gifts have to be special. Either something she can actually use, or something incredibly expensive and completely useless. All 3 for 3. That's Stella to AT. Leo gave Gavin a thumbs up. Damn, man. You're an expert. So, are you guys planning on getting married after graduation? Gavin sighed. I want to, but she wants to buy a house here in Bridgeport. And I don't want to be that far from my parents. They already bought a place for me back home. I can't afford a house here. Not yet. If I stay, we'll have to struggle together. I want her to move to my city, but she says her parents won't let her move so far away. They're worried she won't fit in. Leo had only asked casually, but it turned out Gavin was the one who really needed to talk. If Leo had handed him a beer right then, they'd have been best friends by morning, spilling their guts. The depressed guy ate his apple with a profound sadness. When he was down to the core, he tried to arc it beautifully into the trash can. It hit the rim and bounced out. He sighed, walked over sheepishly, picked it up, and dropped it in. You see, what gets us into trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. It's like this trash can. I thought I could just toss the core in easy, but I couldn't. I had to get up, walk all the way over, and do it again. Gavin wiped his hands on his t-shirt. Leo just stared at him. Damn, Gavin. When did you get so deep? It's kind of freaking me out. Seeing Leo's stunned expression, Gavin laughed. It wasn't me. My girlfriend posted it on her Facebook. I thought she came up with it and it blew my mind. Had to look it up. It's Mark Twain. Okay, that makes more sense. Everything came back to his girlfriend. Thank God Leo had a girlfriend now, too, or this conversation would have been unbearable. He still had laundry to do. If he didn't wash his clothes soon, they'd start to stink. In those cheesy rom-coms, the main characters never seemed to do laundry or even go to the bathroom. They just fell in love 24/7. They barely even had to study. It was all romance all the time. Leo was a little jealous. In the real world, even Alex Young had to do his own laundry. After washing and hanging his clothes, Leo returned to his empty room. Alex and Jordan were due back tomorrow, but Sean said he'd be a few more days. For some reason, after a night of romance, he should have been flying high, but he felt his mood sinking. Maybe Gavin's final words had bummed him out. For normal people, dating involved big questions, like where to buy a house, where to work. Leo sent Stella a goodnight text and tried to sleep, but he just tossed and turned. Insomnia at this age? A little early for that, wasn't it? But for some reason, he just couldn't fall asleep. Normally, he was out in seconds. Tonight, he tossed for what felt like an eternity. He checked his watch. An hour had passed. This is nuts. Get up and play games? Scroll on his phone? Read a novel? He'd been so disciplined lately. Was this some kind of depressive rebound? Or was it just the empty dorm room? Everything was fine. His parents were okay. Stella was back. Sean was getting help for his mom, and his roommates would be here tomorrow. He couldn't understand why he suddenly felt so down, so empty. Lying there, wide awake, he pulled up his system panel. He was shocked by what he saw. Vibe, 7, -2/10, mood, low, below normal threshold. Symptoms of mild depression. What the hell? 1 minute he's kissing and cuddling. The next he's mildly depressed? Was there something seriously wrong with him? He opened TikTok. The hype house is over. The ugly truth behind the downfall. What was this? He never watched their content. Why was the algorithm pushing this garbage at him? He swiped again. That smart guy influencer exposed for getting basic history wrong? Is his whole career a lie? Leo groaned. What did he care if someone else's persona crumbled? Why was his feed so negative tonight? Was it that hard to find a video of a pretty girl dancing? He swiped a few more times. A jump scare from a horror movie trailer popped up. The late-night algorithm was hostile territory. It was true what they said. If you stay up late enough, depression will always catch up to you. He scrolled a little longer, then checked his panel again. Shit, his vibe was down another 3 points. He was at a 4. He quickly closed TikTok. What was happening? He didn't want to read, didn't want to play games, didn't even want to think about romance. It felt like all the negative emotions he'd been suppressing with his new, disciplined life had accumulated and were now exploding all at once. This is insane. He was a college senior. He didn't have a billionaire father, and he hadn't become a tycoon himself. He was way too young to be this depressed. He sent Stella a quick text. You up? No reply. She was asleep. He switched to Facebook. Megan had posted a bunch of selfies. She'd been posting nonstop during fall break, like 3 times a day, each photo edited to perfection. If he hadn't known what she looked like in person, he might have fallen for the tall, skinny, confident, sun-kissed girl in her feed. Next up was a post from the guy who'd installed his parents' water filter. They'd exchanged numbers for any follow-up service. His post read, F this motherfing bull. Normally, he would have deleted someone with that much negativity. But in the middle of the night, he felt a strange kinship. He wanted to curse too, but he didn't know at what. Had things been going too well for him lately? Was he depressed from a lack of conflict? It made no sense. The next post was a classmate sharing a QR code. Please vote for my kid in the school fundraiser, thanks. Then a high school classmate who was supposedly killing it overseas, a legend in their friend circle. His post. Anyone in my network need to exchange for Australian dollars? The picture was a kangaroo in the rain. Then an elementary school classmate. The old town desperately needs a storm. Please let rain. Oh, a late night prayer for rain? The rest of his feed was a flood of vacation photos. Singapore, Paris. His network had gotten so fancy. He thought Stella was the only one who traveled internationally, but it turned out a few of his old classmates were out there too. He kept scrolling until he saw a post from Professor Reed. Good morning. It was a picture of a single blade of grass, heavy with dew. He blinked. Professor Reed was up early. It was only 5:30. Had he been scrolling until dawn? No, wait. He just scrolled so far back he'd reach her morning post. He used to think, how could someone that rich have any problems? They can't. But here he was, in the dead of night, his emotional threshold hitting rock bottom. He had no idea what was wrong with him. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind. Host vibe has dropped to a critical level. Host is advised to take immediate action to improve mood. Consuming sweets may help alleviate symptoms. Leo got out of bed and rummaged through his desk. He found a jar of honey and scooped out a large spoonful, shoving it directly into his mouth. It was sweet, cloyingly sweet. The feeling was like nearly drowning, struggling for air, and then finally being washed ashore, able to lie down and breathe. He found an old cookie in a drawer. He wasn't sure where it came from. Probably a freebie with a coffee he'd ordered and pocketed. It was a round shortbread cookie with a single nut pressed into the center. There were two of them. Leo unwrapped and ate them both. The small bit of food settled his stomach, and a wave of drowsiness finally washed over him. He felt like he could finally sleep. The little cookies saved my life, he thought as he drifted off. Gotta stock up on those tomorrow. The watch on his wrist read 2:44 a.m. The campus was silent. A wind was picking up, making the small trees on the athletic field sway back and forth. He woke up with the sun, went to the bathroom to wash his face, and mixed himself a glass of honey water. After his late-night snack, he passed out without brushing his teeth. As he drank, he checked his system panel. His vibe had mostly recovered. Vibe, 7, plus or minus 1/10, mood, normal. He breathed a sigh of relief. It was just a late-night emo phase. He was fine in the daylight. His new motto, go to bed early enough, and the existential dread can't catch you. But then he read the last line on the panel and froze. Lifespan, 21/59, 60-1. Note, the depressed are often brilliant and forever young, for they rarely live to be old. Holy shit, what the hell happened last night? He'd lost a whole year? If he had a bad couple of months, would he just drop dead? Thinking about it, Professor Reed was a damn miracle. How did she live to be so old? Mathematicians really were a different breed. A moment ago, Leo had felt fine, resurrected, ready to get back to his life as a professional trophy husband. Now, he suddenly felt like he didn't have many years of it left. What had gone wrong? He finished his honey water and used the restroom, then headed out for his morning run. He'd had bad habits before, and the system had warned him he wouldn't live long then, either. But that was the fun, kind of dying young. Pulling an all-nighter to play video games was bad for you, sure, but it also delivered a double dose of happiness. As he jogged downstairs, his footsteps felt a little unsteady, probably a physical echo of his emotional turmoil. He couldn't believe it. He was 21. Shouldn't he be an unstoppable engine, charging forward at full speed? He suddenly remembered that Alex wasn't always happy, either. Alex gave off an invincible vibe, but he wasn't always cheerful. His coping mechanism was to constantly be dating someone new. Jordan's was gaming. If someone called him a fat ass, he called him a skinny twig. Even good-natured Sean had his dark moods. When Sean got upset, he'd turn inward, go silent, which only made him seem more depressed. Leo was rarely alone. One night by himself, and he'd gone full emo. It was a revelation. Maybe truly happy people just didn't think that much. They didn't need to. As he was warming up on the worn-out track near his dorm, the mechanical voice returned. Host has engaged in deep self-reflection, leading to a new level of maturity. Host has deepened his understanding of others, recognizing that happiness and sadness are not default states, and that greater empathy is required. Reward, buff, brooding charm, permanent. This aura grants a natural affinity with nurturing individuals, both human and animal, who will view you through a favorable filter. Side effect. Individuals with a natural drive to succeed will take a special interest in you, hoping to inspire you to join their cause. Okay, fine. At least he got something out of it. Losing a year of his life was a steep price to pay. With this, he had a bit of balance. It meant he couldn't retire until he was 59, dying on the job. He wondered if that counted as a workplace accident, if there'd be a payout. He never realized just living until retirement was a dream so many people couldn't achieve. And he was one of them. But he was only 21. Too early to worry about that now. Leo finished his warm-up and started jogging out of the dorm complex. As he passed the front desk, the security guard saw his slowly retreating figure and, for some reason, felt a sudden urge to call out to him. The poor kid looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. She bought extra donuts this morning. She wanted to give him a couple. By the time the thought formed, he was gone. The guard shook her head. What am I thinking? I barely have enough for myself. She had 8 donuts and planned to eat all of them. Was she losing her mind? Maybe she should get checked for dementia. Leo ran all the way to Professor Reed's usual morning exercise spot. Dr. Croft was there too, dressed more appropriately today, probably because more students were back on campus. She ditched the old-fashioned floral dress that aged her by a decade and was wearing a full sweatsuit. She wasn't slapping herself today. Instead, she was bumping her back against a tree. To extend human life, trees really had to put up with a lot. Morning, Professor Reed. Morning, Dr. Croft. They both turned. Dr. Croft's mind went blank for a second. The young man before her was the perfect embodiment of the figures in her paintings. It was as if he'd walked straight off one of her canvases. There's an old saying that for a woman to look her most alluring, she should dress like a tragic heroine, all in white. It's a look that devastates most men. For a man to be devastatingly handsome, it wasn't about building huge muscles that might appeal to a certain niche, but for most women, it just screamed meathead or danger. What was truly captivating wasn't the sunny, handsome boy-next-door type. It was the one with a touch of melancholy. A handsome, sad, soulful man with clean features and a lean build was the ultimate killer. A depressed-looking fat guy was just a sad sack. In that moment, Genevieve Croft felt she could almost sympathize with those artists who took a muse, who became obsessed. It was a little embarrassing, but she got it. What had this kid been through in one night to suddenly make her heart skip a beat? It was like her art had come to life. Professor Reed, however, frowned. The break seemed to have made the boy listless. I have a conference after the holiday, and I'm taking you with me. Young people need to stay sharp. Now shout with me. 3 times. Wah-ah, wah-ah, wah. You need to release that negative energy. She gave Leo a hearty slap on the arm, and he stumbled. No wonder she was going to live past 100. Realizing her health bar was currently longer than his, Leo figured she knew what she was talking about. What if I'm too embarrassed to shout out here? Shouting is one way to vent. If you can't do that, there's another method. Listen to rousing patriotic music. Listen to it for a week straight. It'll improve your mood significantly. Leo nodded. Noted. Next time he felt emo at night, he'd fall asleep to the national anthem. He said goodbye to the 2 professor NPCs, his immediate quest being to continue painting this afternoon, his future quest a short business trip. He kept running, his mood slowly lifting, until he reached the Fountain Plaza. His player 2, Stella Vance, was already there waiting. He jogged over to her. She was wearing a white, form-fitting athletic top, short enough to expose a sliver of her midriff, and loose, black track pants. It was a look designed to make her torso look short and her legs endless. Before, Leo would have seen it as a nice view. Now a strange, motherly instinct kicked in. He wanted to wrap his arms around her waist, worried she might get cold. Stella, seeing him approach, frowned slightly. He seemed different from before. He'd always been simple, his thoughts easy to read. Today, he looked like he had things on his mind. He was more complex, and it made her want to know more about him. The morning breeze blew across the lake, making the water glitter. It had been a while since they'd run together. As they fell into stride, the gloom of the previous night began to dissipate with every step, the darkness in the corners of his mind retreating, leaving only light. As they ran, he reached out and took her hand. Stella's usual runs felt effortless to Leo. She was always holding back, matching his pace. Today, Leo pulled her along, secretly activating his time dilation buff. He watched her as she became genuinely out of breath, her chest rising and falling, her face flushed and rosy. Leo smiled, satisfied. He liked this version of her, vibrant, alive, and breathless, not the untouchable, perfectly composed goddess. To love her was to want to mess her up a little, to see her lose that perfect control. What kind of twisted psychology was that? For breakfast, Stella took him on her motorcycle to the roadside trailer with the legendary breakfast burritos. The street vendor with the hot dogs didn't stand a chance today. Though Leo knew how to ride, he much preferred wrapping his arms around Stella's waist. Besides, this route was closer to the city, and riding without a license was risky. You never knew when a cop might also be craving a breakfast burrito. You had to get to the burrito trailer early. The owner packed up by 10. Places like this always had a legend. The owner was supposedly retired, financially free, and only made burritos because it was his passion. In reality, if you were financially free, wouldn't you rather be sleeping in? Waking up at the crack of dawn to sling burritos seemed like a strange hobby. But people loved these stories. They made the food taste better, more exclusive. It was October, and the vast wheat fields flanking the road were beautiful. The owner had cleared a small patch for parking, and a handful of cars were already there. A bug zapper hummed under the trailer. Open flames were too risky with the dry fields nearby. The place was packed. The main draw was the freshness. The owner was up by 4 every morning to pick ingredients from the farmer's market. By 10:30, he was done for the day, basically an 8-hour shift with no breaks. Leo treated, ordering 2 everything burritos. They were stuffed with chorizo, steak, shrimp, eggs, potatoes, and green chili. The shrimp today were especially good, plump, and sweet. The sheer abundance of fillings rivaled what you get in a fancy restaurant, and you knew for a fact it wasn't pre-made. You could watch the owner cook it all fresh on the griddle. He'd load up a massive tortilla. Then right before wrapping it, he'd add a spoonful of his special homemade salsa. It was incredible, with a perfect tangy kick. If you liked it spicy, he'd dice a jalapeno in. On the side were little cups of pickled onions, sweet and crunchy, and spicy pickled carrots. To drink, you could grab a coconut water or a Coke from the cooler. After a decade in business, he had it down to a science. When the burrito was done, sizzling hot and wrapped in foil, he'd top it with a handful of crispy fried tortilla strips. Perfect. If you wanted cilantro, you could add it yourself from a container on the counter, along with extra hot sauce and black pepper. Devouring a piping hot burrito while looking out over the golden fields was deeply satisfying. Leo remembered walking through those fields with Stella, winding through the narrow dirt paths. It was silly, but looking back, it was a beautiful memory. A relationship only moves forward. They wouldn't do that now, just for an excuse to hold hands. Now they could hold hands out in the open, no need to get bitten by mosquitoes in a wheat field. After they slowly finished their breakfast, Leo took a few pictures of Stella with her motorcycle, the fields as a backdrop. She looked incredible, a cool, badass vibe. The best photo, he thought, was one where she leaned over the gas tank. Her figure was flawless. She definitely worked out. Her lines were perfect, with not an ounce of excess fat. He had her take a quick video of him eating his burrito, and with the owner's permission, he filmed the process of the burritos being made and even got a picture with the man himself. He could send the footage to Sean as potential material for his TikTok. Sean was still posting, but he wasn't as responsive in their group chat. He was probably trying to stay off his phone, but he always replied eventually. Leo missed him. With Sean, there was a sense of security, of ease. Sean was forever. Girlfriends came and went. They finished up and said goodbye to the owner, a friendly guy who once told them he'd chosen watching Dragon Ball Z over seeing fireflies with a girl and never regretted it. He seemed to be doing just fine now, with his wife working alongside him in the trailer, a hard-working, quiet woman with a warm, lucky-looking smile. Both the fields and the wife had the beauty of a bountiful harvest. They rode back together. It took all of Leo's willpower to keep his hands wrapped around her waist and not let them wander higher. Riding a motorcycle was dangerous enough. They pulled into the garage and parked. The engine was off, but his hands weren't. No one else was around. The air smelled of motor oil. In the sudden, private space, Leo's arms were still around her waist. He leaned in, his lips close to her ear. In the quiet, he could feel that she was nervous, too. A slight tremor ran down her spine. A novice couldn't fake that kind of composure. He never used to understand why people came back from makeout sessions with hickeys. Seemed so aggressive. Now that he was in it, he got it. You don't just kiss properly. Some animal instinct takes over. You want to nibble, to bite down gently. It didn't hurt, just a slight, tingling numbness. The garage, filled with the scent of engine oil, now had a different atmosphere. They were still sitting on the bike. He was behind her, but through the motorcycle's mirror, he could see her face was flushed, her eyes smoldering. When a person is sad, their eyes fill with tears. When they're overcome with pleasure, they do the same. The corners of her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. She looked soft, almost helpless. Leo spent a long time in the garage playing with the bike. Well, mostly playing on the bike. Stella was in the same pose as the photo from the fields, leaning over the tank. But it was a completely different scene now. The rows of neat, solemn tools, the hard, orderly punk metal aesthetic of the garage, contrasted with the soft, vulnerable person on the bike. Her cotton athletic top had no buttons. Cotton wrinkles easily. She was draped over the gleaming metal of the gas tank. Her once neat hair was now a mess. Leo didn't do anything too extreme. Just kissing. Just holding her. At certain moments, he used the time dilation buff, stretching out the blissful time. He loved her, and he loved seeing her like this, lost in pleasure. He watched as her eyes grew moist, as her skin slowly turned pink. Stella never thought she'd one day be draped so helplessly over her own motorcycle. She thought that was the peak of embarrassment. But then she got off the bike, trying to create some distance, and ended up backing into the workbench, sitting on its surface. The cold metal did nothing to cool her down. She didn't know why, but today, Leo was devastatingly attractive. He wasn't the simple boy she could see right through anymore. Today, he was filled with a faint, melancholy charm that made her heart beat faster, that made it easier to get lost in him. He just leaned down and whispered in her ear, and she felt her face burn. She sat there, propped against the cluttered workbench. He felt refreshed, invigorated, walking out of the garage. The last traces of his depressive mood were gone, replaced by a buzzing excitement. A great day starts with a little romance. It was the last day of the break. In theory, they could have spent the whole day together. But Stella had come back early to surprise him. She still had to check in with her parents today. They said their goodbyes at the fountain. She could have gone straight home, but now she felt like she needed to go back to her dorm to freshen up. Her clothes were wrinkled. When Leo got back to his room, he was surprised to find he wasn't alone. Jordan was back. The second he saw Leo, Jordan sniffed the air. "Dude, why do you smell so good? What cologne is that? Were you out messing around?" Leo lifted his own wrist to smell it. There was a faint scent, barely there, like a ghost. What kind of bloodhound was Jordan to pick that up? Stella didn't wear perfume, so it must have been her body wash, something you could only smell if you were pressed right up against her. As he smelled his own palm, he remembered what it had been holding, something soft and fragrant. He recalled how unusually cooperative, how completely lost in the moment Stella had been today. "Hey, what are you thinking about? You got a seriously pervy look on your face," Jordan accused. "Pervy my ass. I was just on a run with Stella. You eaten yet?" Leo laughed. "Yeah, my grandma made me eat breakfast. Said I'd get fat if I didn't. As if I'm not already fat enough. I weighed myself this morning on an empty stomach. 176. After breakfast? 180. 4 pounds of carbs." Jordan stared at Leo, who was practically glowing. He couldn't help but feel like his roommate had gotten even better looking, maybe even taller. Could a relationship really change a person that much, that fast? As Leo reached into his closet to grab something, Jordan's eyes widened. He shot up from his chair. "Wait, don't move." Jordan scrambled behind Leo. Leo tensed. He was still a little sensitive about that particular position. Thankfully, Jordan just reached around and grabbed his left wrist. "What is this? Where's the Rolex? When did your Rolex turn into a Nautilus? Is this a limited edition Patek Philippe Nautilus? Dude, what did you have to sacrifice to get this?" Leo had thought the two-tone Rolex was nice. This new one looked like plain steel, but after wearing it for a night, he found it more comfortable, lighter on his wrist. It didn't have that flashy, new money vibe. It was more subtle. He liked it, and since he couldn't even recognize it, he figured not many others would either. But Jordan did. "Stella gave it to me. She took the Rolex back. Oh my God. Oh my God." Jordan looked like he wanted to grab Leo's wrist and kiss the watch. He wasn't jealous of the Rolex. All the men in his family had one. If he wanted to wear one, he could just borrow one from his dad. But this was a Patek Philippe. This was a Nautilus. Patek Philippe was one of those brands. You could walk into their boutique wearing a Rolex, and the salesperson would smile and ask, "Have you purchased from us before?" If you said no, they'd reply, still smiling, "I'm very sorry, sir, but our brand requires a purchase history to acquire a new timepiece." You're there to create a purchase history. It was an insane rule. They looked down on new customers. It was like going on a blind date and having the other person ask with a polite smile, "Do you have any children?" When you say no, they reply, "Sorry, you can't date unless you already have children." The whole reason you're there is to maybe have kids in the future. He'd been obsessed with the Nautilus for a while. You couldn't buy one new, so he'd been scouring the pre-owned market, hoping to snag a deal. Then TikTok started pushing him videos from secondhand watch dealers. The more he watched, the more he wanted one. He even thought about becoming a dealer himself. The margins were insane. But when he looked into the capital required, he gave up. With his status in his family, he didn't have enough cash to buy a single watch, let alone start a business. The Nautilus was a grail, something you could only dream of. and now it was just sitting there on his roommate's wrist. I feel sick. I'm dizzy, Jordan lamented, clutching his chest. Look, you had a Gucci, you had a Rolex, and I was happy for you, brother. Genuinely. We could go grab a burrito bowl or hit an all-you-can-eat buffet to celebrate. But today you walk in with a six-figure, limited edition Nautilus on your wrist, and I don't think I can eat or sleep ever again. Leo knew instantly he was quoting some meme from their group chat. He rolled his eyes at Jordan's performance. Want an apple? A freshman gave them to me. Said his family grew them. No pesticides. Kinda sweet, kinda sour. Yes, yes. Jordan dropped the act and happily took the apple. He'd had a burrito bowl for breakfast and was feeling greasy. He took a bite, admiring Leo's watch between crunches. Damn, it's beautiful. That dial is just perfect. So clean. He shook his head. Stella is spoiling you rotten. What was the excuse? She trades her Rolex for your Casio. The Casio gets lost, so she trades her Nautilus for your Rolex? What kind of insane logic is that? I would buy her an entire Casio store for that Nautilus. Jordan kept mumbling as he ate his apple. Leo had to admit the excuse was flimsy. The sentiment might be it's the thought that counts, but the gap between a Casio and a Nautilus was astronomical. He was starting to think Stella was a little bit head over heels. At first, he thought she was just intrigued, but this was on another level. He felt a little guilty taking such an expensive gift without knowing how to reciprocate. It made him feel like a kept man. He had to work harder. On a normal path, with the system's help, he should have a bright future. But this was the trophy husband system. He had a sinking feeling that no matter how hard he worked, he'd never catch up to the perks of just being a trophy husband. The lies of the super rich were on a level you couldn't reach, even with cheat codes. When's Alex getting back? He said around noon. We should all get dinner tonight. Sound good. I'm gonna go pack up my stuff and head to the library. Oh, hey, I installed a new graphics card on my PC. We should play some games tonight. After last night's emo episode, Leo felt like his recent routine was a little off. You can't run on pure adrenaline forever. You need an outlet. He used to play games with his roommates every day, and then he just stopped. It felt like a betrayal of his old self. He could do it. He could be disciplined, but the buildup of negative emotions was terrifying. You work hard to achieve a goal, to live a better life. But if you can already live a better life every day, then haven't you already reached the goal? He needed to work hard, but he didn't have to live like a monk. He needed to find a balance. Yeah, man, let's do it. After dinner, Leo agreed. Jordan beamed. He felt like he had his old friend back. It used to be the two of them gaming together all the time. When Leo stopped, playing alone just wasn't the same. Leo went through his morning routine again, then packed his bag for the library. He was a student. Studying was what he was supposed to do. After graduation, having a quiet desk where you could just read would be a luxury. An office desk was still a desk, but you couldn't study there. You were running errands, listening to gossip, making PowerPoints, slacking off, complaining about your boss, working, doing overtime, doing everything but learning. The time you most needed to be learning to escape that life was the time you no longer had. Leo hadn't experienced that yet, but he was starting to feel the joy and reward of learning. There was a preciousness to it. As he walked up the stairs, the system's voice chimed at his head. Host has grasped the principle of balancing work and rest and understood the importance of a relaxed mindset. Reward, buff, effortless vibe, permanent. This buff will make others feel relaxed and comfortable in your presence. In the midst of a busy life, it is wise to occasionally stop and look at the green trees and the blue sky. Pausing to think is as important as striding forward. So, one part brooding, one part effortless vibe, Leo thought. What kind of combination is that? In the classroom, the windows were open and the ceiling fans turned lazily. A few weeks ago, in the afternoon heat, they'd be cranked to level 3. The highest was 5, but no one ever used it. At level 5, the fan would clank and roar like a freight train, looking like it was about to fly off its hinges. Level 4 produced a weird, high-pitched whine that even noise-canceling headphones couldn't block. 3 was the sweet spot, enough breeze to cool you down with a noise level that was just about tolerable. Today, the fan was on level 1, just enough to stir the air and keep the room from feeling stuffy. A cool front had moved in. It was a welcome change. This was the beginning of the best season on campus. The air was crisp and clear. There was a whole grove of maple trees that would soon turn a brilliant gold, carpeting the ground in a thick, soft blanket of leaves. People from all over Bridgeport would drive to campus just to take pictures. The Lakeside Pavilion would host more events. Autumn was perfect, not as hot and stormy as summer, not as damp as spring, and not as bitingly cold as winter. Everything was just right. Leo arrived at the library and handed a yogurt drink to each of the 2 grad school applicants. Accepting a huge favor was complicated. The debt could be repaid in unexpected ways. But accepting a small, everyday kindness required a simple return gesture. That back and forth was what sustained a friendship. Colin Edwards took his with a grin. "Thanks, man." He glanced at the hand, offering him the drink, and did a double take. Wow, a new watch. A guy like this would obviously have more than one. Colin's dad was in business and liked to bring his son along to meet people, so he'd seen enough of the world to recognize a Nautilus. He might not know every model, but the Nautilus was iconic. Over at the next desk, Wendy Lou's eyes were swollen into tiny slits, which was oddly cute. She must have had a late-night cry session. Leo could relate. You could get emo over nothing. Getting emo over a real breakup for a few days was perfectly normal. The fact that she was still here, studying, meant she was channeling that nighttime sadness into daytime motivation. Wendy accepted the yogurt from the Flex Lord and mumbled her thanks through her puffy eyes. She felt like Leo was in top form today. He seemed so relaxed, so effortlessly in control of everything. She was jealous. Looking at his calm demeanor, she rubbed her swollen eyes. If a guy this brilliant was still working this hard, what excuse did she have? "You should try listening to some rousing patriotic music," Leo told her. "Guaranteed to lift your spirits." He was already putting Professor Reed's advice to use. On his walk over, he'd put on the Stars and Stripes Forever, and it had been surprisingly effective. He felt so pumped up that not studying for a few hours would feel like a waste. Leo sat down and started his work. Today, he'd brought an original English novel to read. It was Alex's, a pristine, unread copy of The Old Man and the Sea that an ex-girlfriend had given him. Leo had asked to borrow it. He wanted to try reading entirely in English, looking up words he didn't know as he went. His previous study method of just memorizing vocabulary and text had a major flaw. He wasn't using the language. There was no output, no regular conversation with native speakers. His progress was already light years ahead of his old self. He'd studied for years before with no real strategy, moving at a snail's pace. He had a foundation, but it was built slowly and inefficiently. Now, with his enhanced intellect, he had a new perspective on learning. The best way to learn was to produce, to apply the knowledge. That's what gave it meaning and motivation. Our whole education system forces everyone to learn English, a painful process for most, and in the end, it's useless for the majority who never travel or interact with foreigners. The biggest obstacle was the lack of output. Once you realize something is a useful tool, you truly start to learn it, instead of just memorizing and forgetting. So he was trying to use English as a tool, to read with it. It was clumsy at first, but as he slowly got into the rhythm, it started to feel right. He thought about how we learn our native language. You get to the point where you can read stories and novels, and from there, it all flows naturally. Leo was engrossed. Reading in a different language offered a new perspective. When he'd read the translated version, everything had seemed straightforward. But the original had nuances, subtle differences. Translators, limited by their own era and perspective, often inserted their own interpretations. Reading the original was a new kind of fun. He was learning a language and enjoying a story at the same time. He stretched his scheduled study time by an hour. In the middle of it, he used his time dilation buff, taking short breaks, and ended up with 2 solid hours of focused reading. He still didn't want to stop. He wanted to keep going, reading it word by word. He felt the story's immense power, its portrayal of an unyielding will to survive, its beautiful, moving imagery. He was feeling the joy of learning. High-intellect people were terrifying. They actually found pleasure in studying. It was incredible. It wasn't a struggle at all. Before, he had to use immense willpower just to force himself to study. Now it felt enjoyable. It was as if the channels in his mind had been widened, allowing him to absorb more knowledge. Before, he was like a student with narrow, blocked channels, unable to absorb much, with most of it just leaking out. He never thought he'd one day experience the thrill of learning. It was a rush. His timer went off. It was time for his yogurt break. Even though he wanted to continue, he knew that if he broke his schedule once, it would be harder to stick to it in the future. Humans are creatures of habit and laziness. Even with a captivating book, he had to stop. He closed the book and stood up to stretch. Balance was key. If you just sat and studied all day, you might be fine when you're young, but when you get older, a bad back, a pot belly, thick legs, hemorrhoids, kidney stones, gallstones, all sorts of problems would crop up. Leo picked up his yogurt, forcing himself to enjoy the next half hour of rest. He couldn't believe he was now a person who was reluctant to take a break. It was scary. He bought a peach-flavored one. He was really living large now. No more plain yogurt for him. As he was drinking it, the system's voice sounded in his mind. Host has actively pursued learning. understanding that application and output are the best methods for consolidating knowledge. Host has read The Old Man and the Sea with great focus, resonating deeply with the protagonist's spirit of unyielding struggle against fate. Reward: basic fishing proficiency level 2, permanent. Host will have exceptional luck when fishing at sea. The hospital didn't have ceiling fans, but it had central air and heat. A cold snap had hit today, but the building's heat wouldn't be turned on until November. An experienced nurse, anticipating this, had already switched the room's unit to heat. She entered room 37, having grown accustomed to seeing the young man and his sister taking care of the older woman. They were supposedly relatives of the hospital director. The director himself had stopped by twice over the break, so the staff made sure to give them extra attention and a friendly attitude. The girl was wearing a new jacket today, moving about her tasks with crisp efficiency. Her mother didn't like the dry heat from the AC. It made her throat scratchy and constantly thirsty. Drinking more water meant more trips to the bathroom. Waking up 8 or 9 times a night meant you weren't really sleeping at all. Modern medicine, for all its advances, couldn't cure 90% of diseases. In the end, you had to learn to live with them. In the corner of the room, Sean Riley was editing a video on his phone. The software was clunky, not as good as on a computer, but it worked. The footage was what Leo had sent him of the painting session. When his mom was first hospitalized, his mind was a chaotic mess, and he didn't know what to post. He felt like giving up, just throwing anything up there. And for a day, he had. A little voice in his head told him, "It's fine. No one will care if you miss a day." But another, more frantic voice screamed, "No, you can't. If you give up once, your conviction, that thin thread you're holding on to, will snap, and you'll never be able to tie it back together." Sean was being torn apart by his own thoughts. His mom was sick, his dad's boss wasn't paying him, so he was taking odd jobs. His sister was a high school senior, and he was a college senior. A little while ago, he thought his life was about to take off. Now, he wasn't dreaming of flying. He just wanted to survive. He wanted his mom to survive. He wanted them all to get through this. When ordinary people are hit with anxiety, a miracle doesn't usually fall from the sky. More anxiety does. Over the past couple of days, Sean had watched his TikTok analytics plummet. Comments are way down. His follower count had stalled. The algorithm doesn't know you're going through a crisis. It only knows you're not producing quality content, and it will quickly divert your traffic elsewhere. Seeing him like this, his sister, Sarah, had pulled him out into the hallway for a long talk. "Sean, the bad thing hasn't even fully happened yet, and you're already anxious. That's like suffering through it twice. After it happens, if you keep dwelling on it, you've suffered 3 times. Mom is sick. That's a fact. We have to face it. Being anxious doesn't help. We all need to pull ourselves together and do what we need to do. That's the only way Mom can rest easy. Our anxiety just makes everything worse, for us and for the situation." Sarah's voice was calm. Apart from the day she took Leo's call and broke down crying in the stairwell, she had been a rock. Crying was just an emotional release. You let it out once, and then you move on. Crying all the time was bad for your eyes and your emotional control. She urged her brother to focus on his TikTok, to not give up. She'd watched her dad talking to one of the hospital orderlies. She casually joined the conversation, asking about the job. In the end, her dad thought he had stumbled upon a job opportunity himself and was thrilled to take on night shifts as an orderly. In reality, a simple job like that wasn't something a quiet, unassuming construction worker like their dad would have easily found. He was just being polite, making small talk. He wasn't thinking about finding work. Sarah had told her mom that her senior year was incredibly demanding. She needed her mom to get better soon, so she could come take care of her. She pointed out that many parents rented apartments near the high school to support their kids. She needed that, too. The school food was terrible, and she couldn't afford to get sick. Her mom had immediately agreed. She was already sick. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter getting sick, too. Taking care of a student, cooking and cleaning, was a much easier job than picking cotton or hauling concrete. With Sarah's seemingly selfish demands, the family quickly found its footing again, the initial panic subsiding. Her mom, now motivated, was determined to get better. She had at least see Sarah through her senior year and into college. Then, she'd have no regrets. A family from their village with 2 kids in college. That was something to be proud of. She was cooperating fully with her treatment, hoping to be discharged soon so she wouldn't hold her daughter back. She was already planning to rent a small apartment in the town near the high school. As for getting treatment in Bridgeport, she refused to even consider it. Sarah knew what her mother was thinking and didn't argue. The friendly woman from the next room, the one who liked to visit, worked in medical administration at the Bridgeport Hospital. Sarah had been quietly observing everyone. She had an idea. The county hospital could have dialysis machines. She'd been researching it. A lot of people in their county needed dialysis. Maybe it was the water quality, but kidney disease was common there. Many had to travel to the city for treatment. In more developed areas, county hospitals offer dialysis. Their county was just behind the times. Sarah's young mind was spinning. She wanted a dialysis machine in their county hospital. She started chatting with a man in the next room, casually mentioning that her brother was good friends with the hospital director's adopted son. The woman overheard and was intrigued. Not a son-in-law, but an adopted son? The director only had one daughter, so it made sense. Then, Sarah let it slip that her brother helps the director's son with his TikTok account, that they were partners. She played the part of a naive high school student who didn't know how to keep a secret. The woman concluded that the Riley family were all simple, good-hearted people, except for the son, who seemed a bit gloomy and untrustworthy. Sean, who was probably the most honest one in the family, was completely oblivious, the victim of an undeserved character assassination. He was, however, newly motivated by his sister's encouragement. 2 new pimples had erupted on his chin, and his mouth was full of canker sores. But once he started editing, his mind settled. He wasn't adrift in pain anymore. He just wanted to do this one thing well, to give it his all. He realized some of the footage Leo had shot was incredible. Leo's casual filming, he just wanted to do this one thing well, to give it his all. He realized some of the footage Leo had shot was incredible. Leo's casual filming had a better sense of composition, a more professional feel than his own. Leo was the one with a real talent for cinematography, but he was still insisting they do this together, letting Sean be the face of the channel. This TikTok account was something Sean had to do. Leo was doing it entirely for him. He couldn't give up. He couldn't be lazy. He edited with intense focus. It was just a clip of someone painting, but through Sean's lens, it took on an almost supernatural feel. It started normally enough. Leo painting an apple, looking handsome and focused, much like his reading videos. But then, with a blurry transition, the boy painting the apple was suddenly in the painting. And in the final shot, the painting was locked away in a dark room. He had unintentionally edited a simple video into a short, unsettling horror story that left you wanting more. It was a reflection of how he felt in the hospital, especially walking the deserted corridors late at night, where the sight of a closed door could make his heart jump. He poured that feeling into the video. It wasn't just a clip anymore. It was a micro-short suspense film. When he was done, he uploaded it and let out a long breath. The feeling of completing something properly was entirely different from the feeling of just phoning it in, like he had the day before. Yesterday, he'd been too scared to even look at the comments, afraid of the criticism, guilty when he saw familiar names, feeling he'd let them down. But today, after pouring his soul into the edit, he was excited, confident. He was happy when he posted it. He turned and saw his mom, propped up on her bed, watching him with a smile. "Mom, are you done? You look so focused. I didn't want to bother you." "I'm done. Mom, I'm making TikToks, those short videos everyone watches. I'm going to get better and better at it. I'll be able to make money soon. I already made enough for my living expenses this month. You won't have to worry about me anymore. I can make money, and I can take care of you both. I've been in a content desert for so long. I've rewatched every horror movie on every list. I even watched that gross sewer monster movie out of desperation. And today, TikTok blessed me with a short that literally gave me goosebumps. It's just so short. Why did the algorithm assign me this video? What does it want from me? My hair is still standing on end. I came for the cute guy. I stayed for the existential dread. My heart is still pounding. That last shot, when the door slowly closes and the darkness swallows him. I almost dropped my phone. Quick PSA for everyone wondering. The woman painting the boy with the apple is Dr. Genevieve Croft, a famous contemporary artist. Her paintings sell for millions. I was just thinking, who would paint something that realistic just for a TikTok? And then I realized, the painting is worth way more than the TikTok could ever make. Is this content I'm even worthy of seeing? So now TikTok is where all the millionaires hang out, I guess. For real, how are TikTokers hiring such high-end extras now? $1 million painting as a prop. I never understood why paintings were so expensive. Always thought it was just money laundering. But now, seeing that painting, that moment he's trapped in the dark room, my heart just stopped. I felt like I was being swallowed by the darkness. I'm still scared the person in the painting is going to turn and look at me. The door is closed, but I'm still terrified. How did we go from a beautiful video of a college student painting to a goddamn horror film? Can we talk about how good the roommate's painting skills are too? As an art student, I can say he's at least as good as I am. Clown emoji someone, send this to the directors of those terrible new horror movies. If you can't come up with your own ideas, at least plagiarize something good. The quality of his channel just keeps getting better. I literally felt my world go dark after watching that. I mean, my world was illuminated. The new TikTok went live, and the feedback was immediate and overwhelming. The comments flooded in, all of them stunned. In the fast-paced world of social media, new things spread quickly, but leaving a lasting impression was much harder. Sean's new video did just that. Almost everyone who didn't immediately swipe away was captivated, hooked. He'd perfectly captured the TikTok formula, the element of surprise. The stark contrast. It began as a peaceful, aesthetic video, a shot of the campus building, the afternoon sun, a large tree, a boy painting. It was all beautiful, but the final shot flipped everything on its head. Many people went back and rewatched it, and suddenly the peaceful campus scene felt ominous. The sun and the trees, once bright and beautiful, now seemed to hint at a distorted reality. Anyone who watched it had the same reaction. A whispered, "What the F?" followed by an immediate impulse to share it with a friend. It was the kind of scary you just had to make someone else experience. People were drawn in by the nice visuals, the handsome guy, the nostalgia college vibe. Then, a sudden jolt, and the rest was high-octane nightmare fuel. The cute guy was just a figure in a painting, his broody expression now seeming less romantic and more tragic, trapped in that studio. When the door closed, it was hard to tell if the painter and the painting were two different people or the same person, if the man in the painting had somehow escaped. It had the same unsettling ambiguity as that classic sci-fi movie where the lone survivor escapes the alien planet, but the audience is left wondering if it's really her or the creature wearing her skin. This tiny video had achieved that same level of sophisticated horror. It felt like a contender for short film of the year. Back in reality, Leo finished his yogurt, took his break, and walked around a bit. He filmed a few clips of his daily routine, then prepared to switch to his economics textbook. Suddenly, a new message appeared in his mind. Detected rapid skill progression in host's shared cinematography partner, Sean Riley. He has mastered emotional spatial editing technique, reaching entry-level proficiency level 1+. Progress is being synchronized and amplified for host. Host has achieved basic editing proficiency level 2 with a specialization in spatial distortion. Leo had almost forgotten about that feature. The system's reminder was a pleasant surprise. His daily routine was getting a bit repetitive. He wondered what Sean had done to make such a huge leap. He was tempted to open TikTok and see, but he resisted. Picking up his phone while studying was a trap. A quick look could easily turn into half an hour, and by the time he put it down, he'd have forgotten why he picked it up in the first place. His phone was a master of making time disappear, more powerful than his own system. He forced himself to stay off his phone. The news of Sean's progress was good news. He had been worried Sean would fall into a slump and not recover. He remembered an afternoon, hot and humid, when they were walking back from somewhere. They'd stopped to rest under a tree, sitting on a concrete ledge overlooking a soccer field, their legs dangling. Sean had said his dream was just to be able to afford 2 bowls of noodles, to eat until he was full. Leo couldn't articulate his own dream beyond wanting to be rich, very rich. As a kid, his dream was to be a useful member of society. He didn't know when, after years of schooling, that had morphed into just wanting to be wealthy. Sean hadn't been beaten down by life. He was still fighting for his 2 bowls of noodles. Leo couldn't fall behind. Before, when he'd said he wanted to be rich, it came from a place of insecurity, of confusion. He just wanted money to appear like winning the lottery. Now he felt more grounded. He started studying his economics textbook again, adding his new stock market venture to the equation. The market had been closed for the break, but it had been on a tear lately. He saw Colin Edwards practically vibrating with excitement. Apparently, his uncle was thrilled too. To be honest, for a guy who was used to having a few $1,000s at most, suddenly investing tens of thousands was a crazy leap. He'd done it without much thought, just treating it as a perk from the system. But the recent trend was a massive, market-wide surge. A web novelist he followed had even announced he was selling his house to go all in on stocks, saying he'd already made millions and was quitting writing. Leo didn't get it. His previous economics education consisted mainly of remembering to show up for attendance and not fail the final. He'd never thought he was studying for himself. What a strange mindset. He reread the textbook, but it was dry, a collection of formulas that really needed a professor to explain them with examples. The professor probably had, but he hadn't been listening at the time. The only thing he remembered was Ms. Miller mentioning that their economics professor had lost tens of thousands in the market and had already sold everything. At least the professor was getting some real-world teaching experience. His next lecture on stock market losses would probably be much more vivid. Today, Leo supplemented his textbook with an issue of the Economics Weekly, a magazine Jordan had brought from home. Jordan was genuinely interested in economics, probably because he had a natural advantage and he actually understood some of it. Leo figured combining the textbook with real-world examples might lead to a breakthrough. He found an article titled The Mysterious Energy Tycoon. It profiled a man named S. Vance. The article described him as a fascinating figure, an old-school oil man who had pivoted to real estate. As environmental regulations tightened and the fossil fuel industry began its decline, real estate boomed. He transformed himself into a property magnate. Then, years later, before the housing market began to cool, he sold off most of his properties and moved into medical technology. And then, the pandemic hit. The writer analyzed Vance's investment strategy and found it to be uncanny. He was essentially forced out of the energy sector when his operations were shut down by regulators. Everyone thought he was finished, but he immediately jumped into the hottest market, real estate. And at the peak of the real estate boom, he got out again and switched to medical tech. Then the property market crashed and the medical industry soared. The man's foresight was almost supernatural. He was also described as charismatic but intensely private. After his flashy days in the oil business, he had operated in the shadows, quietly amassing a fortune. If not for this article, no one would have connected the dots. The author concluded by saying he planned to follow Vance's lead, not by investing with him, but by simply doing whatever Vance did. And, lately, it seemed Vance was getting into the stock market. The article read more like a gossip column than a piece of financial journalism, even though it was in a respected weekly. It included a photo of S. Vance, but it was blurry, and the man shared a last name with Stella. How was he supposed to analyze this with his textbook? If a guy like that came to lecture, it would be invaluable. The elite universities probably got speakers like him, not Northwood State. Leo continued reading, alternating between his textbook and the magazine. Time flew by, but he felt a sense of purpose, as if he were slowly filling in the blank spaces of his future. Alex Young returned to campus a new man, brimming with confidence and energy. Success is a powerful tonic, and the aura of political power is even more potent. When his parents told him something, it was usually a sure thing. Growing up in a family of civil servants, he knew just how hard it was to make that next leap in rank. For most, reaching a senior director level was the ceiling. Getting there already meant you were exceptionally capable, talented, and lucky. But there was a saying that you weren't really in power until you rose above that level, until you were in a position to govern, to lead a whole department or region. Making that jump was like breaking into a whole new world. Alex felt that only now, with his father on the cusp of that leap, could he truly be considered the son of a high-ranking official. Before, they were just a family of government employees. His family was undergoing a monumental shift, a quantum leap. When one person succeeds, their whole family rises with them, especially the direct heir. The joy of this upward momentum was intoxicating. He felt like he could finally relax and let his dad do the hard work. He could just coast. Everyone hopes their kids will become successful so they can retire in comfort. He was doing it in reverse, hoping his dad would become successful so he could coast. And the odds were looking pretty good. He took a cab from the station back to campus. His mom had actually asked if he needed a car and driver arranged for him at school. It was clear his mom, the director, was getting a little carried away by the good news. She was usually the one telling him to keep a low profile. His dad, the current head of the Water Resources Bureau and future county executive, or maybe even deputy mayor, had sternly reprimanded her. No showing off, no high-profile displays. Then he'd added that if Alex really needed it, he could arrange something. Alex sighed. Both of his parents were getting ahead of themselves. No, he had to be the calm one. He sat them down and gave them a long lecture. You guys have to hold it together. I've been waiting to be a true second-generation official for a long time. I'm counting on you. He told them to stick to the old principles. No corruption, no bribes, no shady dealings. Visiting Sean's family was a huge reality check for me, he told them. I used to complain about my own situation, feeling like I didn't have enough. But compared to him, I basically won the lottery at birth. I used to look down on people who weren't doing well, thinking they were lazy or had too many flaws. Now, I realize I was the one with the shallow perspective, living in a bubble with no real empathy. Mom, Dad, don't worry about me. I realize now how good I have it. I don't need you to become overnight successes. We can just take it steady, one step at a time. His parents were deeply moved. Their boy had grown up, but on second thought, wait, he used to think his situation was bad. What a little brat. He really had never known hardship. And so Alex, the man whose father had been told by a fortune teller that his son had the makings of a governor, took a cab back to his familiar campus. It felt good to be back. It was like he had secretly upgraded all his gear and was returning to an old video game, able to see everything from a higher perspective. He was brimming with confidence. As soon as he got out of the cab, an underclassman recognized him. This was the kingdom he had built over 4 years, his network of contacts. The younger student eagerly helped him with his luggage. Normally, Alex just had a backpack and a small suitcase, but this time his mom had packed a bunch of gifts for his roommates and professors. The help was welcome. As they were walking past the IT building, they ran into Leo coming downstairs. Leo naturally took one of the bags. The underclassman, his duty done, made a quick escape. An accidental run-in with President Yang was one thing, but actually having a conversation with him was stressful. Was he just the student council vice president? He was just a student, right? But he had such an official, almost intimidating air about him. It was a lot to handle. Alex watched the kid practically flee and felt a little exasperated. He hadn't even asked his name yet. Leo saw the sprinting underclassman and couldn't help but laugh. Alex, you gotta tone down that new aura of authority. You scare the poor kid half to death. Alex was thrilled to see Leo. Leo was his lucky star. His predictions were scarily accurate. Alex was tempted to ask him if he would really become a governor one day, but he held back. You had to be careful with someone whose words came true. What if he said no? It would mess with his head. Leo's comment made him realize he had, in fact, been a bit much with the underclassmen. That wouldn't work in everyday life. People wouldn't feel comfortable opening up to him. He needed to save that persona for when he was a high-ranking official. For now, he needed to be one of the people. Yeah, I guess I went a little overboard, he admitted. Is Jordan back? Let's all get lunch. My treat. He's back. Let's head to the dorm first. As Leo helped Alex with his bags, he received a notification from his learning task. Host has diligently studied economics, learning to connect theory with real-world events and analysis. Reward: Basic Economic Analysis, Level 1. You can now talk a good game, though accuracy is not guaranteed. As economics must be combined with international affairs, national policy, and current events, this skill is best used for everyday flexing and pontificating. General accuracy rate is above 70%. What a random reward, Leo thought. By the way, Leo, how's Sean doing? Alex had been so overwhelmed by his family's good news the past few days that he'd forgotten to ask. It was only natural. Any normal kid who found out their dad was about to become a state-level official would be ecstatic. He'd spent the last 2 days processing the news and visiting his grandparents. He simply hadn't had the mental bandwidth. The joys and sorrows of humanity are not always shared. Both Alex's and Sean's families were about to undergo life-altering changes, but in opposite directions. Alex's family was ascending to a new social class. Sean's family was falling from working poor into the category of a family with a chronic invalid, a much deeper level of poverty. Before, Alex would have remembered to check in, but he'd just been too happy. He's doing okay. He posted a new TikTok today, and the editing was incredible. I think he's getting back on his feet, Leo said. He remembered Sarah had texted him, thanking him for asking Ms. Miller to help her apply for financial aid. He'd only mentioned it once, but Ms. Miller had apparently gone above and beyond. He made a mental note to thank her. That's good. As long as he's mentally okay, there's always a way forward. As they talked, Alex was practically bouncing with excitement. It was the feeling of having a huge secret you were dying to share, but had to keep bottled up. It was difficult. His grin was stretching from ear to ear. When they entered the dorm room, Jordan took one look at Alex and asked, Dude, did you get a new girlfriend or something? You look ridiculously happy. Nope, Alex said righteously. Women will only slow my progress. I'm not planning on dating for a while. I need to focus on self-improvement. No girlfriend? You're radiating more horny energy than Leo right now. Are you in heat? Alex had always thought Jordan was the sharpest one in the room. His perception was uncanny, but he couldn't say anything, not until everything was official. He just grinned. Come on, let's go eat. My treat. Alex dropped his bags, changed his shirt, and the 3 of them headed for Lucky's on the student strip. It felt strange, just the 3 of them at the restaurant. Usually, Sean would be there, diligently wiping down the table again and pouring tea for everyone. Alex would order the food. Jordan would be focused on his phone. Leo would be helping Sean. That was the usual rhythm. With Sean gone, it felt off. 3 instead of 4. Sean wasn't a loud person, not a chatterbox, but his absence left a noticeable void. They'd been living together for 4 years now, in the same room, and had almost never fought. That was a rare thing. Married couples fight all the time. The 4 of them had been thrown together by the university housing lottery, friends assigned by fate. The student strip was back in full swing after the break. The owner of Lucky's had taken a few days off and looked well-rested. They talked about him before, how he must be making good money. The place was always packed. Running a small business like this was probably more lucrative than the entry-level jobs they'd get after graduation. But then again, while their starting salaries might be lower, their potential ceiling was much higher. They had opportunities the owner never would. They ordered the usuals: buffalo wings, corn fritters, a pot of chili, and some cheesy bread. They were all young men with big appetites. Even though Leo had eaten a huge breakfast burrito, the intense studying had burned through his energy, and he was hungry again. Alex had been eating rich food at home for days and was craving something simple from campus. The fried cheese sticks here were especially greasy and delicious, fried to a perfect crisp. The jalapeno poppers were probably sourced from a local farmer, not some mass distributor, because they had a real, satisfying heat to them. It was the kind of surprisingly good food you only find in a dive bar. Jordan was a picky eater, but he loved Lucky's. The wings were perfectly tender. Even Leo, whose family was in the restaurant business, which, contrary to popular belief, does not guarantee a sophisticated palate, thought everything tasted great. After the fall break, the sun was still bright, but a strong, comfortable breeze had picked up. They ate without much conversation. Alex and Leo both had 2 heaping plates of food. Jordan, the biggest of the 3, was trying to watch his weight and only had 1 plate. But perhaps to compensate for this sacrifice, he ate 5/6 of the sweet corn fritters himself. He had a sweet tooth. After lunch, Alex insisted on paying. Normally they'd split it, but he was adamant today, so they let him. On the walk back to the dorm, Alex was unusually talkative. It was out of character. He was usually emotionally intelligent, but reserved, unless he'd had a few drinks. Today, he was practically channeling Sean, chattering away excitedly, trying to fill the silence. Even Leo noticed. Alex had definitely come into some good news. It wasn't a new relationship. Leo knew what that kind of giddy foolishness felt like. He was living it. Alex was happy, but he wasn't lovesick. He was still rational. It probably wasn't about his own accomplishments, either. It was a little early for a senior to have a major career breakthrough. That meant it had to be good news for a close family member, something he couldn't announce publicly yet. Considering his parents were high-ranking officials, it had to be a promotion. A huge one for him to be this overjoyed. Leo was a little startled by his own analysis. He really was getting smarter. Before, if he saw someone happy, he'd just be happy along with them. Now, he could deduce the reason. And without even asking, he felt certain he was right. It was a strange feeling, like a math genius who just knows he solved the problem correctly. No wonder high-intellect people navigated life so effortlessly. For them, life was an open book test. For everyone else, it was a journey through a foggy sea, never knowing when you might hit a reef. Back in the dorm, his theory was confirmed when Alex handed out their gifts. Usually, Alex's mom sent things that were nice, but not extravagant, thoughtful, but not so expensive that it would make them uncomfortable. This time, in addition to snacks, there was a gift certificate for a premium online seafood market. The certificate was $4.350. It was for a box of Alaskan king crab legs. It was a fancy gift. His family wouldn't risk their careers over a few gift certificates, so it wasn't a bribe. Alex had mentioned before that his parents were scrupulous, even paying for their own hotels on business trips to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Sure enough, Alex explained, my grandpa's retired, and one of his old colleagues sent them over. They got a bunch, but they're too old to eat that much rich food, so they pass them along. It's crab season, so you guys can give them to your families. Alex took a picture of the certificate for Sean and sent it to him. It was perfect timing. Sean's mom was scheduled to be discharged in a couple of days. The good news was she didn't need a kidney transplant, but she would need regular dialysis. She couldn't do heavy labor or get too tired. Continuing to stay in a hospital wouldn't help much. This was the new normal. Their successful hospital stay was largely thanks to Leo pulling strings with the director, but they couldn't take that help for granted. The director had personally approved a special fund to cover some of their costs, which made their insurance situation much easier. Without that, they wouldn't have been able to afford certain medicines or get such a good room. There were still patients on gurneys and hallways. Sarah had insisted they needed to formally thank the director. She suggested one of those commemorative plaques. Sean felt that was too impersonal. They should give a real gift. But they were broke. They couldn't afford anything nice enough. Alex's gift certificate was the perfect solution. There was a pickup location for the seafood market right near the hospital. A plaque and a box of premium crab legs felt like a proper thank you. Sean thanked Alex in their group chat and said he'd be back in a few days, that everything was okay. Everyone replied with reassuring emojis. Leo forwarded the certificate to his mom. He remembered she loved king crab. Wow, this is really expensive, his mom said over the phone. You have to thank your friend properly. Now that the weather's cooled down, I'll send you some of our homemade beef jerky for you and your friends to share. Oh, and your Aunt Sky, with that small farm support program she's involved in. She bought a few £1,000s of grapefruits. They're for the program, but I tried one, and they're so much sweeter than the ones at the store, even if they look a little funny. I'll have her send you a bag. A whole sack of grapefruit? Isn't the shipping going to be expensive? Leo asked. No, her agency has a deal with a shipping company for the program. They can send it directly from her office. Okay then. Mom, can you ask Aunt Sky to send 2 sacks? I want to give some to my teachers, too. After hanging up, Tammy Foster turned to her husband, Ray, and sighed contentedly. Wow, our boy's really growing up. He's actually thinking about giving gifts to his teachers on his own. Ray Foster was just as surprised. That was something he would never think to do. The kid was really maturing. He was taking after his uncle. The old couple imagined the future. It seemed like their son was going to be more successful than they were. It was a happy thought, something to look forward to. After he graduates and finds a good job, they'd scrape together enough for a down payment on a small apartment. Then he'd find a partner, get married, and live a good, stable life. That would be enough.